The story begins with the fact that today is the birthday of the head of the Tang family. Everyone in the banquet hall was having fun and having fascinating conversations. And only the young man shook his head with displeasure. This was the eldest gentleman from the Tang family. You graduated from Yale University. The unfortunate rich young man sincerely did not understand why he was here and what kind of world this was. Just a few days ago, he was doing ordinary things, but the system forced him to become a villain. And if the main character survives to the end, he will be able to return to the real world with major rewards. However, each time he found himself in utter hell, from where he miraculously managed to escape only by defeating a ferocious monster. You asked what book he was lucky enough to get into this time. The system replied that he was in the 57th chapter of the book, The God of War and the Dragon Lord Fighting in the Capital of Hua, where the character Yi Cheng, who is the creator of mercenary organizations, Dragon Soul and Dragon Lord, was also the best in medicine. But most importantly, Tan needs to win over the girl Cheng likes, who returned to the city incognito to investigate the murders. Head Tang, in turn, decided to settle all misunderstandings with the Su family through marriage. Yi intended to cause a commotion at the birthday party so he could take Muyue with him. You found this all quite strange. The guy was sure that something special would happen at the holiday. In this regard, he plunged into the thought process to consider all possible options. At that moment, a female voice called out to him. The girl said that there was no point in pursuing her, since she would not marry him. Tan smiled sarcastically and replied that he did not even dare to think about such a thing. This literally shocked the young lady. The surprised person asked him again. The main character mentally said that she should hurry to her beloved Cheng. But Su suddenly heard a voice similar to Tang's, and couldn't figure out who was speaking. After all, she looked at you and he didn't say anything. The young man, in turn, looked at her suspiciously. Muyue was almost sure that this voice belonged to the guy. Tang urged Su to hurry to the elders to dot the i's. You wanted to quickly finish with her in order to get to the end of the story, but he was sorry that Muyue would only add to Ye's harem. The girl heard his voice again, because there was no one else besides them. But the young lady didn't understand why he was so excited, because Cheng had only given a gift. But if he really decided to put her in his harem to mock her, then this must be avoided. After which they reached the heads of the families, where Tang said that he needed to tell you the important news. Since they discussed with Uncle Su the future wedding of him and Muyue and came to the conclusion that there were no obstacles to this event. Then the head directed his joyful gaze at the main character and asked what he thought about this. You simply shocked everyone present with his extremely unexpected answer and refused the wedding. The perplexed Tan said that he had been pursuing her for 3 whole years, and now he was refusing such a chance. The guy confidently stated that he had thought everything over again and came to exactly this decision, adding that marriage is for life and therefore he is not yet ready for such a responsible step. Chief Su assumed that Muyue had asked him to do this and urged the young man to be honest if this was indeed the case. The situation gradually became more complicated, because Xiao believed that everything would be much easier and faster. In this regard, Tan once again extremely confidently stated that this was his final decision. Su asked the young man to calm down and said that he understood everything perfectly. Then he turned his stern gaze to his daughter and asked why she was behaving this way, because the guy had been caring for her for 3 years. The head put pressure on her in every possible way, urging her to make a wise decision. You also became nervous. He mentally began to ask her to give up the marriage and rebuff her father. The girl, in turn, did not understand why she was being matched with Chen, because she was not going to run after him. Moreover, she wondered why, 3 years later, Xiao changed his mind about marrying her. Suddenly, Muyue said that she had no idea why Tang refused the wedding, since on the contrary, she wanted to marry him. The main character was shocked by Su's statement, because everyone is obliged to play their role in this plot. However, the young lady found this situation extremely funny and exciting. Head Tang enthusiastically congratulated them on their difficult decision and hurried to inform the guests about it. You understood that from now on he would not be able to hide from Cheng, who would clearly take action. Muyue, in turn, heard notes of despair in her future husband's voice. A moment later, the heads announced the upcoming wedding of the young people. Everyone sincerely rejoiced at this event, except for Cheng, who almost choked on his wine when he heard such unpleasant news. At that moment, Tang saw Ye's people in the crowd and was horrified, because his aura was not at all friendly. Suddenly the dragon ruler moved towards him. you believed that he only had a few minutes to live. Muyue also saw the angry Cheng in the pandemonium and smiled at him gloatingly. Unexpectedly, the guy menacingly announced that he did not give his consent to this marriage. Head Su hurried to rein in the young man and said that he did not dare interfere in their family affairs, then ordered the guards to throw him out. The Dragon Lord did not like this attitude, since no one spoke to him like that. At this time, the main character suddenly intervened. He urged Yi not to be so impulsive and to calm down, arguing that today is grandfather's birthday and there is no point in spoiling the holiday. However, the guests began to urge Yuya to immediately throw the rogue out into the street. The guy understood that the situation was heating up and apparently he could not avoid the conflict. Cheng looked at the guy carefully and thought that such a weakling was not worthy of Su. Tang wanted to resolve everything peacefully, but he also did not intend to give himself offense. At this moment, Muyue laughed, as if she herself was expecting an exciting slaughter for her. Yi noticed her smile and assumed that she had finally realized the insignificance of Yu. Suddenly Cheng said that she should go with him, because he would give her complete freedom and would not limit her in anything. The main character was only glad of this turn of events and mentally hurried them. However, as soon as Yi reached out to take Muyue's hand and take her with him, the girl unexpectedly waved him off and said menacingly that he did not dare behave like that and touch her. Cheng, in turn, was shocked by this answer and did not understand what was happening. After Su began to hear the thoughts of her fiancé, the world seemed to open up for her from a different side. Moreover, she did not want to be in captivity with Yi, and in a harem at that. Cheng, meanwhile, began to convince her not to be afraid of anyone, declaring that he would not let the girl be offended. The Dragon Lord assumed that Tan was threatening her to get his way. The perplexed main character wanted this performance to end as quickly as possible. Muyue said that Yi had thought up too much for himself, and even though he helped her family, now he should just leave. Cheng believed that in this way she was trying to protect him, because Su deliberately reacted this way to what was happening. The Dragon Sovereign again asked her to leave with him, assuring her that the Tang family would not harm her. At this moment, Muyue's father lost his nerve, and he hit the insolent man, intending to drive him away. Su urged him to leave his family alone and not to pester his daughter, since she has a fiancé. Yi endured it, because he understood that he shouldn't reveal his identity now, and besides, dragons had endurance. In this regard, the young ruler smiled and said that if he really was not welcome here, he would leave. Passing by Yu, Cheng said that he had not shown himself in any way and the Su family would still suffer with him. Tang, in turn, continued to mentally talk to those around him, and tried to encourage Muyue to run away with Yi. However, the girl really considered him her fiancé and decided to prove it. Su came closer to her betrothed. Yu was noticeably nervous and did not understand what she was doing, after which she kissed him tenderly, but the young man managed to offer his hand, which instantly became a reason for discussion on the part of the guests present. Cheng was furious with this situation, because his woman dared to kiss another in front of everyone. However, he later realized that she had no other choice, since in this way she protected him from the Tang family. The Dragon Lord wanted to destroy them all and take his girlfriend. At the end of the banquet, where no further incidents occurred, Yu went home. The guy expressed his dissatisfaction with the system, because the plot was radically different from the original. Because Muyue was originally supposed to run away with Yi, but today she acted differently. Tan was at a loss as to why she suddenly changed her mind, perhaps due to the character change. After which the main character asked the system whether he was due a reward for completing the stage of the scenario. The program really presented a gift, but it was just another car that was collecting dust in the garage. Since Yu was a wealthy man and did not need material wealth. At that moment, the head of the family's security called him. Jin said that the young man had been given a gift from Mr. Wang. The guy took the box from the bodyguard and, thanking him, began to think. The novel does feature the friendly Wang family, but one day Mr. Wang became paralyzed in his legs. His granddaughter Ishue immediately hurried home when she learned what happened to her grandfather. It suddenly dawned on him that this was actually part of the plot of chapter 60. After all, according to the plot, only Cheng can cure the old man, thereby winning Su's trust and finally taking her with him. Tan believed that this was a great chance for him, and the main thing was that it wouldn't lead to a fight. Suddenly, the head of security again disturbed the young man and asked if everything was okay with him. Surprised, Yu replied that everything was fine with him and there was no reason to worry. Jin said that he understood the master's condition and had already ordered his people to find this insolent Yi. Tan was at a loss and did not know how to react to such a statement. He added that he had entrusted this matter to 30 trained people, and now Cheng would definitely pay for everything. The guy understood that he could no longer escape the vengeance of the Dragon Lord. Jin saw how Yu's face changed sharply and assumed that he felt bad, which he hurried to ask him about. But Tan assured him that everything was fine with him and offered he another job in South Africa as part of their business. The bodyguard asked the gentleman in surprise, trying to understand why he made such a decision. The guy insisted on this promotion for Jin and said that tomorrow he could be promoted, and the salary would also be higher. He was immensely happy about this unexpected event and thanked the young man. The main character believed that from Africa he would definitely not be able to take revenge on Cheng for him. Afterwards, sitting down on the sofa, the idea came to him to visit the Wang family. And literally an hour later, Yu was already on the territory of the Wang family's house. Walking along the long corridors of the building, he suddenly ran into a girl. At first Tan did not understand who it was and began to look at the young lady. However, he soon recognized her as Wang Yixue, which made him extremely surprised. The girl also did not expect to see him at such a time. The guy noticed that her dress was made of high-quality silk, and there was deathly silence for a while. Suddenly Yixue asked what he was talking about so vaguely. Yu said in surprise that he didn't say anything and asked how she was feeling. Van thought that she had heard something, and she asked the young man why he had come to them. Tang replied that he decided to visit the old man, but the young lady said that grandfather was sleeping and invited him to drink tea. Yu and Yixue broke up last year, so his presence made her nervous. At a meeting of classmates, she found out that he was in trouble and even began to feel sorry for him. Seeing him today, Vaughn suddenly realized that her feelings hadn't really gone away. However, it was already too late to change anything, because the Tang and Su families announced the engagement of their heirs. From Yu's facial expression and behavior, one could understand that this was not such a problem for him. After which the young man thought that Yixue was much more beautiful than Muyue and, unlike her, had achieved everything herself. The girl realized that these were his thoughts, because she clearly heard Tan's voice, while he was silent. Seeing Wang's worried expression, Yu asked if she was okay. Naturally, the young lady replied that everything was fine and did not show it so that he would not suspect anything. In fact, Yixue was pleased that Tang considered her the first beauty. She naively believed that Yu could never forget her, and still thinks about her. With a smile on her face, Wang congratulated him on his engagement to Muyue. The guy sadly said that this was a long story and it was too late to retreat. He himself began to think about why Su needed to play out this whole comedy with the wedding. Noticing how the main character had changed, Yixue asked if they really had problems in their relationship. The young man replied that there were simply no feelings between them, and therefore there were no problems. Tan liked the pleasant smell emanating from the girl and he again began to evaluate her external characteristics. Van noticed that he was looking at her with a loving gaze, as before. After which Yixue sat down on the sofa with him and, taking his hand, suggested starting over. However, Yu stated that he did not like her or Muyue and she should keep her distance. He himself began to mentally ask her not to do this again, because it would be difficult for him to restrain himself. Hearing another stream of thoughts from the worried Tang, the girl suddenly laughed. The young master could not understand what was happening to her and why his answer made her laugh so much. Yu, in turn, began to be afraid of her, even more than Su, and did not understand what was happening to all of them. Suddenly the guy stood up and said that he needed to go to the restroom. But as soon as he stood up, Yixue asked him to wait and stretched out her hand to grab onto him. The end result was that Wang fell to the floor. Tan believed that she was deliberately putting on a performance in front of him. The girl suddenly announced that she fell because of him, and he didn't even help her get up. Naturally, Yu helped her get up, but he himself began to wonder whether he would be able to escape from her. After they sat down on the sofa, Yixue threw her sprained leg onto it and asked him to stretch it a little. However, the main character unexpectedly refused to help Wang and stretch his leg. After all, he just wanted to check the originality of the plot, but not to enter into a relationship with the secondary heroine. Wang continued to use her feminine manipulation, saying that at university, when she sprained her ankle, he helped her, but now he refuses. Tan, in turn, suggested calling her doctor so that he could provide assistance, realizing that in fact she is another victim of Yi, and he is here as cannon fodder. Ishue had no idea what Yu was talking about or why he thought she was Cheng's girlfriend. An angry Wang stated that if he left, she would tell everyone how he took advantage of her. However, this course of events was unacceptable to Tan, because Yi would destroy him. In this connection, the young man agreed to stretch her leg and asked her not to tell anyone about it. But as soon as the excited Yu touched his leg and began to massage it, suddenly, the girl screamed, as if she deliberately wanted attention to be paid to them. The perplexed guy could not understand why she needed this and what she was up to. After some time, Tan said that he had already stretched her leg enough, but Ishue insisted that her calf muscle still hurt very much. The main character understood that she was doing this on purpose and stated that nothing hurt her. The girl calmly lowered her leg and said that if she needed his help, she would turn to him. Since Wang suddenly began to hear Yu's thoughts, the girl did not want to let him go so easily. An enraged Tang asked the system why it organized this whole circus. In response, the program only mockingly laughed at its owner. At this moment, the young lady's phone suddenly rang, and Ishue instantly picked up the phone, and she asked to postpone the meeting on the new energy project for half an hour so that she could arrive. You knew that Cheng and the Wang family had invested about 5-10 billion in this development, and Rulong had seized the reins. Ishue was shocked that Tang knew about their company's main secret. The girl believed that in this way he decided to help her by investigating all the intricacies of this case, after which she stated that she needed to go to a meeting at the company. She herself intended to get more information about Rulong and Chen. Suddenly it dawned on the young man that her strange behavior did not affect the main plot and later Yi would take the girl with him. The main character naively believed that this time he would definitely succeed. At this time, a woman's voice suddenly called out to him, but it was not Ishue. Tan turned around sharply to find out who was calling him, and he was surprised when he saw the girl. The stranger entered the room, and Yu recognized her as Xiaoya. He never expected to meet her. Sweet Xiao greeted the young master, calling him her brother. Extremely surprised, Tan also greeted her and noted that they had not seen each other for a long time. Jiang was the chief physician of the Su family and one of the best doctors in the country, but she was also a member of Ye's harem. After all, upon returning to China, Cheng immediately came to their city, because they have the prettiest girls. Xiaoya asked how Chief Tang was doing and whether he was taking the prescribed medicine. Yu thanked her for her concern and replied that the medicine was really helping and he was feeling much better. Suddenly surprised, Jiang asked why he was being so nice to her, after which they went outside. The guy began to think again, because the Tang family patronized the Jiang family, and therefore no one bothered them. But how the poor girl ended up in Cheng's harem was unknown. The perplexed Xiaoya asked what kind of harem he was talking about and who Yi was. Yu was surprised and replied that he did not say anything, but he himself could not understand why girls are so strange today. Jiang once again looked around, making sure once again that it was Tan's voice. At this moment, the maid told them that Mr. Wang had already woken up and asked Dr. Yu to come inside. The main character instantly rushed with Xiao to go to Mr. Wang's house. The old man, in turn, was surprised by the presence of the young man and greeted him. Joyful Tang greeted his grandfather and said that when he gets better, they will definitely play chess. However, Rulong and Chen were also present in the room, which the young man did not expect. Wang worriedly asked Yi if he was sure of his diagnosis. Since the chance of recovery was only 50%, Yu knew that Rulong was in cahoots and wanted to conquer the power of the Wang family. Cheng, in turn, said quite confidently that his diagnosis was absolutely correct. Considering the rich to be idle talkers, Yi intended to soon take Xiaoya into his harem. After all, not only Yu's talent is important, but also her numerous connections, which will clearly be useful in the future. And as long as there are such brilliant doctors as the Jiang family, their families are safe. Looking worried, Rulong suddenly asked Xiao about his grandfather's health. Yu replied that she wanted to use acupuncture to clear the clogged blood vessels. She then kindly asked Tan to help her disinfect the needles. The guy began to deny it, saying that he didn't really understand this. Surprised, Jiang asked if he had done similar procedures before, then again hurried him. Cheng clearly didn't like the fact that Yu was always hanging around the girls he liked. Tan looked characteristically at the dissatisfied Yi, showing with all his appearance that he had nothing to do with it. Xiao, in turn, asked everyone to close the windows and leave the room. The businesslike Dragon King asked if Jiang really wanted to use 13 needles to cure hemiplegia. The perplexed Yu confidently said that this was the only right way out. However, Cheng did not agree with her and stated that acupuncture for this disease would only harm the patient. And since she does not understand the real problem, Yi suggested transferring authority to him. People were simply furious at such a self-confident statement from a young guy. And only Tang understood that Cheng would now show his qualities and Xiao would immediately fall in love with him. Hearing the main character's thoughts, the girl was confused and asked him what he was talking about. Zhulong hastened to calm everyone down and said that he specially called Yi because he is well versed in medicine. One of the concerned family members said that grandfather's health is not a joke and it is not worth exposing him to such a risk. The Dragon Lord replied that this girl was no older than him and probably no better at understanding than he was. Suddenly Cheng invited everyone present to make a bet. People were outraged by the behavior of the arrogant young man. And if Dr. Jiang fails, he will personally help the old man, and they will pay him for it. Otherwise, if she manages to achieve a result, he will immediately leave their house and will not disturb them anymore. The family members had no choice but to agree to the conditions of the self-confident Yi. Satisfied, Cheng also urged Xiao to make a bet with him, assuring that he always keeps his word. Yu asked not to distract her from her work and refused to participate in this. Thanks to Yu's thoughts, the girl understood what was happening. Jiang was shocked that the doctor would talk about such things when it comes to human life. Naive Yi believed that she would not succeed and then he would demonstrate his abilities and Xiao would fall in love with him. However, Yu still believed that women were born to admire the power of a man. Rulong was also worried whether Cheng would succeed, but seeing his smile, the guy thought that he had everything under control. Tang, in turn, knew that the old man would show residual symptoms because Jiang had made a mistake in treatment. And in just a few minutes, Yi will provide the necessary assistance to his grandfather and Xiao will throw himself at his feet. After the doctor injected the last needle, she asked how Mr. Wang was feeling. The old man began to come to his senses and said that his condition had improved significantly and now he could speak. Everyone present rejoiced, calling Dr. Yu a true professional. But Cheng still did not let up and said that if within 3 minutes grandfather felt better, then he had lost. However, after feeling Mr. Wang's weak pulse, the girl realized that everything was happening as Tang said. In this connection, she decided to slightly change the method of treatment, because traditional Chinese medicine did not help the old man. Unexpectedly, Xiao kindly asked the young man to give her another needle. The main character began to realize with horror that she had finally figured out what the problem was. Naturally, this was all thanks to Yuya's loud thoughts, otherwise she would never have known about her mistake. After which Jiang injected a needle in the required place, and grandfather felt better. Shocked, Cheng couldn't understand how she discovered the problem. After all, according to the logic of things, Yu should have already finished with her method of treatment. At this moment, one of the family members noticed that more than 3 minutes had already passed, and the guy still had not kept his word. The Dragon King understood that he had failed to conquer the Wang family, but he couldn't just leave. He sincerely believed that Xiao would be with him, and he couldn't give up ahead of time. Yi publicly admitted his defeat and joyfully declared that Zhang's 13 needles were amazing. The Dragon Lord then took out his needle to show it to the girl. Tang knew that he was doing this deliberately to finally impress Xiaoya. However, Yu did not fall for his tricks, since one must observe ethics and in no case put the patient's life at stake. Suddenly Jiang reminded the young man of his promise and asked him to leave the house. Yu was stunned and did not understand what she was doing, because Yi showed off his needle. Cheng was also in shock because the young lady did not give in to him, but rather urged him to leave. Zhulong said that doctors often say unnecessary things and he should not take this statement seriously. Yi, in turn, instantly invited the girl to dinner as an apology. The main character noticed his self-confidence, and if the sister doesn't figure out how to reject the offer, then he has a chance. However, the young lady said that she did not want to have dinner with a man like him. After all, Jiang roughly guessed how impudent he was from Brother Tang's thoughts. The Dragon Lord was once again rejected by yet another beauty. At that moment, Ishua entered the room and inquired about her grandfather's health. Cheng immediately turned his focus to her and began to brazenly look at the girl. Because Wang literally eclipsed the until recently desired Xiaoye with her beauty, naive Yi again began to convince himself that this girl would join his harem. But Ishua didn't even look at him. First of all, she found out that the project that her brother Rulong was promoting was a setup, and that's why she came, to make sure of this once again. Wang sincerely thanked Dr. Jiang for helping her grandfather. The sweet modest woman replied that this was her job and was not worth thanks. After which, looking at the time, Xiao hurried to return, since it was already 3 o'clock and she still had things to do. Ishue wished her a safe journey and suggested that she come visit them someday. Yu approached the sad Tang and asked why he did not say goodbye to her. The guy was lost in his thoughts and only a moment later did he pay attention to her. After all, he understood that Yi had already appropriated Jiang for himself, and one wrong step on his part could turn into a tragedy. The girl, in turn, could not understand where this smug guy came from. Cheng took this as another attempt by Tan to annoy him and take the girl away from him. Then he decided to act for sure and asked for a visit to Xiao in order to allegedly learn several treatment methods from her. However, Yu stood her ground and again refused the young man, saying that she had no time for this, nor did she have the desire. At the same time, the Dragon Lord did not lose heart, because he was counting on a backup option, which was Ishua. Yi knocked Zhulong with his hand, thereby calling him to immediate action. Cousin Wang hurried to introduce his new friend to his sister. The girl looked rather coldly and indifferently at Yi, who was pleased with himself. Rulong introduced him as a great medical expert who was no worse than Dr. Jiang. Arrogant Cheng extended his hand to her and greeted Ishua as politely as possible. Suddenly, Miss Wang asked him if anyone had told him. The interested dragon ruler asked who and what exactly should have told him. Breaking into a malicious smile, the girl said that he had an extremely disgusting laugh. Yi was in shock. No one had ever said anything like that to him, because he sincerely considered his laughter a source of charm and was even proud of it. Cheng said that there was some misunderstanding between them and they needed to discuss everything soon. After which the stunned Zhulong hastened to see off the Dragon Lord. Going out into the street, the guy asked Yi not to take what happened to heart. Suddenly Cheng asked if he really had such a disgusting laugh. Zhulong noticed that he was rather unique, but not disgusting. He was wondering how Tang was connected to them. The brother replied that Yu was his sister's ex-boyfriend. The Dragon Lord believed that he was deliberately taking away the girls he liked from him. Yi immediately decided to call his informant Qiying to find out the information he needed. Yin made inquiries and found out that Yu is the secretary of the general director and a fairly successful person. In response, Cheng gave him only a week, during which time Qi would destroy the Tang family. Meanwhile, the main character seemed to feel that someone was remembering him, and he asked the system to immediately give him a reward for completing the second arc. The reward was truly worthy, since he received immunity to all poisons that could enter the body. At this moment, Ishue suddenly ran out onto the street and stopped him. The perplexed Tan asked her what had happened again. The guy began to think about what she needed again because he had already made it clear to her that she would not get him. However, the girl was not as simple as she might seem, and decided to play this exciting game. Starting to put on a show, Wang asked if the ex-girlfriend was allowed to talk to the Honorable Sir. Yu urged her not to bother herself with such questions, since there was no point in them. Tan tried to do everything possible to make her hate him, because their time had already passed. Ishue sadly said that she would not pester him anymore, after which she pretended that Cheng had returned and, looking to the side, turned to him. Naturally, the main character turned around because he did not expect that Yi would be so persistent. Cunning Wang instantly moved closer to him and began filming everything on video. The young man abruptly moved away from her. Ishue continued her game and asked why he was behaving this way. Extremely dissatisfied with this action, Ten asked why she was doing this and what was wrong with her. Perfectly aware that if Yi sees this video, he will go berserk and kill him. The girl, in turn, said that no other person would take the initiative to approach him. However, the embittered guy demanded that she delete the video, offering a huge amount of money for it. Since he had no problems with money, you believe that he could pay her off. But Ishue said that she had more than enough money and did not need it. Based on the thoughts of her ex-boyfriend, the extremely cunning lady built a new plan of action. Tan asked what she needed if she really didn't care about money. The young man could not understand why she pestered him, because there were a lot of good guys around. Meanwhile, Wang said that if he behaves badly, she will publish the video on the internet. Yu extremely absurdly threatened her with physical harm and said that she would wash herself with tears, after which he once again convincingly asked her to immediately delete the video. Self-confident Ishue began to provoke him and call for rash actions. Tired of her tricks, Tan once again asked what she needed from him. The girl, in turn, approached him and asked him to follow her. But you said that her cunning manipulation would no longer work on him. Ishue assured him that there was no catch in this and she really needed his help. The main character literally prayed that she wouldn't start pestering him again. Entering Wang's bedroom, Tan was surprised by the complete chaos in the girl's room. This atmosphere seemed suspicious to him. Things seemed to be deliberately scattered. In this connection, the young man asked why her room was such a mess and whether she ever cleaned it. Yu himself did not know how to make her feel hatred towards him. It was necessary to come up with a plan of action. Unexpectedly, Ishue asked him in a rather arrogant manner to clean the bedroom. Tan was literally taken aback and asked if she really wanted him to clean the house. Van didn't see anything wrong with this request, because not so long ago he had already helped her with cleaning. Naturally, the guy had no choice but to accept the terms of the Sly Fox's game. He tried to convince himself that there was nothing wrong with cleaning, unless he caught some kind of infection. This thought of the young man simply infuriated Ishue, but as always, she didn't show it. Suddenly, Wang asked if he had communicated with girls other than Miyue after they broke up. The guy replied that he and Su have exclusively a contractual relationship and nothing more. In addition to this, he has 4 girlfriends. He himself understood perfectly well that in fact he had not even touched any of them, since he was very busy with various matters. The smiling girl listened with pleasure to the thoughts of the busy gentleman. Suddenly she called him Gigolo, as if she wanted to see how he would react. Tan assumed that she was beginning to hate him and decided to anger her even more, intending to pretend to be ruthless and mock her properly. You picked up her bra and noticed that she had disgusting taste, and he didn't understand how she could buy something like that. In response, Ishue showed her phone and broke into a malicious smile, reminding him of the conditions of the game. The young man realized that he was playing with fire and it was better to continue cleaning so that she would definitely delete the video. Suddenly, Wang took a photo of him and stated that it was completely accidental. Tan asked why she always kept her phone ready and suggested that she do something else. After all, according to the plot, Ishue should not do this, and must follow the original script. After which he immediately asked for forgiveness and said that he was just joking. But the cunning girl knew that he could not be trusted, since he said one thing and thought about something else. At this time, the guy continued to dutifully clean the room. Suddenly Van said that she wanted to discuss an important point. Due to the fact that she plans to invest in one extremely profitable business, Wang asked Yu's opinion. The main character was delighted at such a sudden turn of events and smiled. And despite the fact that Yi is an absolute scoundrel, the young man still intended to help him. Tan said that this was a great idea, but he himself understood that if she invested in this matter, then everything would return to the original plot. And soon Cheng will be in his rightful place, and he will play part of his role. Ishue said that her partner is from France, so she won't be able to check everything herself, but if he likes the idea, then she will invest. The guy noticed that he had contacted a similar company once and there shouldn't be any problems. In fact, you knew that Ye's company was creating fake accounts to increase popularity. Once again, Wang learned the truth from the thoughts of her ex-boyfriend. Ishue said that she would entrust the project to her cousin Rulong and asked Tang if it was a good idea. The young man assured her that he was truly an ideal candidate, since he was clearly not lacking in talent. He was genuinely happy that things were starting to return to the original plot while Li and Wang were hiding the problems of the project. Ishue found this strange, because Li contributed to the development of the project and did everything possible to promote it. While she was analyzing, Yu neatly folded all her things and cleaned her bedroom. After which he asked if he was free now. The girl began to say something indistinctly. Ultimately, the young lady agreed to let him go and told him he could go. Wang continued to hold her phone in her hands. Tan knew that she had not deleted the photos and videos. However, the girl began to convince him otherwise, saying that she had no need for these photos and she deleted them. Joyful Yu declared that he would no longer appear in her life and would not disturb her, since he was not worthy of such a beauty, and he hurried to leave her house before she came up with another task for him. Thus, the young man completed the next chapter. It took him a lot of time to return to the original plot. At this time, in a beautiful high-rise building located in the city center, called Donghai, Muyue was poring over in her company. The girl even thought about Tanya at work. Suddenly she saw her assistant and asked why she wasn't going home, because the working day was already over. The assistant replied that she did not pay attention to the time, especially since you never came to see Mrs. Su. After all, for 3 years he came for her at 6 in the evening and took her for dinner, but this time he was not there. Muyue found herself thinking that Tang had annoyed her before, but now she felt uneasy. The assistant said that it was really late and she needed to go home. The sad lady wished her a happy journey extremely sadly and was left in splendid isolation. Su could not understand why you stopped courting her 3 years later. After which I tried to calm down and rush home to throw out obsessive thoughts about him. However, when she went down to the parking lot of the Donghai company, the girl completely fell apart. And yet she wrote a message to Tanu, where she asked him to meet her in the evening to talk. Seeing the notification from Muyue, the guy was upset and did not understand what she needed from him. But when he read that she wanted to talk about her upcoming wedding, he became suspicious because they had discussed it before. In fact, Su herself didn't understand why she was doing this, but she just wanted to see him. Then they called each other and Yu urged her to talk now, without meeting, since he did not have time. Muyue asked if he really hated her so much and didn't even want to see her. Tan again hurried her, because he was already late for the girls, which he brazenly informed her about. He even began to like playing the role of a real scoundrel, because before he could not even think that this role would suit him. Su, in turn, became angry and stated that she did not need him and was only interested in his family. The main character suggested that she really wasn't all right in her head, but at the same time, his plan would succeed and Muyue would abandon him. At that moment, he received a message. Yu was afraid that one of the persistent girls was writing again, but it turned out to be his old brother. The young man realized that this was a great opportunity to use his advantage as a villain to solve problems. In connection with this, I agreed to meet with him. Driving up to the club in his luxury car, he impressed those around him. Everyone was wondering who would be driving this Lamborghini, because they were already choking on their saliva with envy. After which Tan got out of the car and walked towards the second-generation rich man. Qin Ming was a nightclub assessor and a member of one of the 4 influential families. Yu asked his friend Ming to help make the girl hate him. Qin smiled at him and asked what kind of girl he was talking about. The guy said Muyue's name extremely sadly, saying that he needed her to leave him. Min began to say that he initially needed to learn from him and then such a situation would not have happened. Tan agreed with him, but the girls constantly continued to pester him. Qin invited him to meet a young lady who was not inferior even to Su. The young man asked him in surprise whether there was really someone on the same level as Muyue. Smiling Min said that he would now see for himself. At this time, a beautiful young girl headed towards them and kindly greeted Yuya. Qin hurried to introduce them and introduced his rich friend to the girl. The lady introduced herself as Ling Yen and said that Mr. Tang was quite a handsome young businessman. Naturally, the main character reciprocated and smiled sweetly at Mina's friend. He himself understood perfectly well that this was another doll that fell at Cheng's feet, which for some reason was paying attention to him. Moreover, guests are usually not greeted so politely. In any case, she seemed suspicious. In fact, Ian was the main killer of Ye's group, called Dragon Soul. Qin noticed how Lin looked at his friend with enthusiasm, because he was always in demand among girls. Min asked him in a whisper if he liked his girlfriend. Yu, in turn, could not hide from the girl's annoying gaze. Ian suggested that it was not the ventriloquist speaking, but most likely the guy's inner voice. Lin tried to calm down so as not to commit rash acts. Tan decided to use old tricks to make her mistake him for a madman. In this connection, the smiling young man asked if she had a boyfriend. Ian began to flirt with him and asked if Mr. Yu really wanted to become this very guy. Lin wanted to know as much as possible about him so she could be aware of his knowledge of the organization. The main character realized that this lady was clearly pursuing her own goals and was not as simple as she seemed. Then he asked about her hobbies to see if they had common ground. Ian stated that she liked music and dancing, then asked him a similar question. The young man said that he likes to watch films and also listen to music. Unexpectedly, Lin approached Tan, but he did not like such a maneuver. You knew that according to the plot, Yi forced his subordinates to go into the fire, and then, in the guise of a prince, saved the girl. Ian was in shock and did not understand how he knew that the Dragon Lord saved her when she failed in the mission. At this moment, Qin's face suddenly changed, as if he had seen a monster. Tan, in turn, asked what happened and why he had such a reaction. Ming said in a trembling voice that the embittered Muyue was coming towards them. You turned around and saw Su. The girl seemed to be out of her mind and loudly called out to her future husband. Tan sat back on the sofa in Yin's company and asked if she had come to talk about divorce. He himself began to mentally ask her to get angry, because he was doing everything for this, but the girl did not fall for his provocations. Moreover, realizing that he was deliberately trying to piss her off, Muyue began to play along with him. Su smiled sweetly and sat down on the sofa and invited him to have a little drink and talk about renewing their relationship. The main character was shocked by her unusual behavior and did not know what to say. Qin was also surprised and realized that this girl was not so simple, because she did not create a scandal when she saw her fiancé with someone else. Thus, Yu's plans failed again, but the young man was not going to give up and continued his performance. Suddenly Tang hugged Ian and asked Muyue to leave as she was disturbing them, hoping that she will still leave them, because she must have a sense of dignity or some kind of moral principles. Meanwhile, Lin still couldn't believe that the Dragon King was really such a womanizer. Su was once again convinced that her fiancé was an extremely bad actor trying to present himself as a gigolo. Muyue stated that she would not mind having a drink with them and was not at all jealous of him. You didn't understand why she didn't leave and is not at all worried about her reputation. After all, by doing so she digs herself deeper and deeper, and such behavior is not worthy of a girl of such status. Su said that she knew how many unpleasant moments he had experienced over the past 3 years, adding that she wants to make him the happiest person in the world, while he is allowed everything without any complaints. Tan kept hoping to anger Muyue and said that he and Ian needed privacy, and she could continue drinking. After which the main character took Lin by the arm and led the young lady along. The perplexed Qin did not understand why his friend was behaving this way and asked what was happening to him today. Su knew that the young man was playing for the audience, but if he really lied to her for all 3 years, then this explains everything. Entering the restroom, Ian asked why you brought her here. Suddenly, Tang took out a gift box and stated that he liked girls like her, adding that women like Muyue only cause him wild irritation and disgust. And very soon he will bring the divorce to an end, and invited Lin to have a drink with him. The girl, in turn, wanted to notify the Dragon Lord as soon as possible. Ian went down to the parking lot and hurried to get into her car, where she planned to call Yi. Joyful Cheng asked how their business was going and whether she had completed the task. He always affectionately called her Yen-er, but after you showed him a different side, such tricks no longer worked for her. Lin replied that everything was already close to completion, but then Tang came with Muyue and he was off the hook. Indignant, Yi asked why he came there with Su. Lin said that they were drinking. Cheng assumed that he was going to get her drunk so that he could blackmail her later. Yin noticed that they drank too little, but Muyue was extremely active. The Dragon King threateningly stated that Su should only be his girlfriend and she must be protected at all costs. Lin suggested that the Lord sneak into Yu's house to protect her from him. But Yin no longer wanted to complete the task. She wanted to get closer to Tang, because he might know the secrets of the Dragon Soul organization. Yi agreed and urged her to do everything possible so that no one would lay a finger on his beloved. Suddenly a guard called out to him and demanded that he speak a lower tone, since at such a late time people were resting. Cheng turned around and looked menacingly at the huge guy, but did nothing. As a result, the bodyguard hastened to drive away the dragon ruler. Angry Yi literally boiled with anger and hoped that in the near future he would enslave the entire city. Meanwhile, Tang returned to Ming and Muyue, who got drunk and fell asleep sitting on the sofa. Smiling Qin happily noted that his brother managed it in just 3 minutes. You said that he sent Yin home, since in fact she is extremely dangerous, and in the future it is better not to communicate with her. After the main character fell into Tan's body, his memory also belonged to him and therefore he was worried about his friend. Ming trusted him and asked what he was going to do with the drunken Su. The guy replied that he had no choice but to take her home so she could get a good sleep. But since he himself drank, he did not dare to get behind the wheel, especially since he would have liked to live to see the end of the story. In between, you thought about how good it was to be a rich man. At this moment, the sleeping Suyue began to fidget in the chair and ended up laying her head on it. Tang resisted this in every possible way. In connection with this, he turned her head in the other direction and leaned her elbows on the window. Observing what was happening, the driver asked if everything was fine. The young man assured her that everything was fine and suddenly thought about her late mother, who died of cancer when Su was still little. And her father Chongshan, in turn, wanted to raise a strong and independent personality in Muyue, so he was strict with her. However, as soon as she drank a little alcohol, this image collapsed instantly, and she turned into a defenseless and trusting girl. At this time, the restless girl began to toss and turn again. You tried to calm her down. Suddenly Su stretched out her hands to him and came close. Ten tried to push her away from him, but the assertive Muyue continued to reach out to him and urged him to kiss her. Naturally, you did not do this. Then the young lady took the initiative. Tan still rested his hands, thereby not giving her the opportunity to carry out her plans. He even asked the driver for help, but the guy replied that he was driving and could not help. At a certain moment, Muyue was still able to tip him back and literally fell on top of him. After which she again reached out to him, intending to kiss him, but the young man continued to resist. Indignant, Su asked why he did not reciprocate her feelings. The main character asked her a counter question, why she was behaving so unceremoniously. He even began to have the feeling that this was not Muyue at all, but some kind of drunkard. The girl decided to remind him how not so long ago he swore his love for her, but now everything has changed dramatically. You looked at her and sadly said that he had been waiting for her for 3 whole years. Then Su asked him why he didn't want to try to rebuild the relationship. Tan confidently said that this would not change anything and everything would remain as before. However, the irrepressible Mui strongly encouraged him to try again. She then moved closer to him again and asked him to give them a chance and not ignore her. As soon as you tried to tell her something, the girl fell into a deep sleep again. In this connection, Tan sighed with relief, because he would not have to explain obvious things to her again. After some time, they finally arrived at the Tang family's house. He brought her to his place, since in this state she definitely could not appear at home. The father, in turn, did not recognize Su and thought that his son decided to have a little fun before the wedding, which made him furious and even took off his belt to flog his son. But Yu hastened to calm him down and declared that it was actually Muyue. The stunned father asked what was wrong with her and how much she drank to be in such a state, adding that he understands how long he has been in love with Su, but he needs to be more tolerant. Ten assured that he is not interested in her. The indignant father asked who he liked then, suggesting that it could be a girl from the Wang or Qin family. However, Yu said quite convincingly that he was also indifferent to them, after which he hurried back to his expensive bed to get a good night's sleep, celebrating the rather fascinating life of the wealthy man in whose shoes he found himself. The next morning, Su woke up and almost burned with shame, because she remembered everything perfectly, but did not understand why she did it. Most likely, the young lady was guided by the basic instinct of a person, especially while intoxicated. Muyue was so uncomfortable with what had happened that she did not want to see or talk to anyone. However, this did not happen. Just a couple of minutes later, her aunt called her for breakfast. The girl slowly opened the door of the room and greeted the Tang family. The main character, smiling, also wished her good morning. Su, in turn, did not answer anything and could not even look him in the eyes. She silently walked past you. This is exactly the reaction the guy was waiting for, believing that the heroine would return to the original plot and everything would be fine. Then everyone sat down at the table, but the father did not like that Tang did not look after Muyue and demanded that he reform. However, the young man had a different opinion and said that she was no longer small and could provide herself with food. After all, he understood perfectly well that he needed to survive until the final, and he already had too many risky moments. Su remained silent, but it was clear from her gaze that she did not like such an attitude. After which the young lady said that she could really handle it herself and asked for forgiveness for yesterday's events. Yu began to boil with anger, as he understood that she was again playing the role of the victim. Tan instantly said that he had nothing to do with it and didn't get her drunk, and if they didn't believe him, they could ask Ming. Muyue confirmed his words and added that the blame lies entirely with her, since she drank alone. The guy intervened again and said that they did not get along with each other and therefore it was better for them not to marry. The father literally jumped out of his seat and pulled out his belt, hinting at a disastrous continuation of breakfast for him. Sue asked not to touch her fiancé, since she really offended him, but promised to fix everything soon. The father of the ungrateful offspring noticed that she was an extremely prudent girl. The mother, in turn, convincingly asked her future daughter-in-law to eat as much as possible. Throughout breakfast, they had a pleasant conversation, and only the gloomy Tan sat silently at the table. Meanwhile, in the Wang Company office, where Ishue already had much more extensive information about the project, with the help of Yu's thoughts, the girl conducted an investigation, which took several days, and the truth came out. She was most concerned about Cheng, but the only thing she could consider now was an investment company. Interestingly, this company recently invested in another and became the largest auctioneer, but it is not registered on Ishue suggested that he actually had accomplices. Wang immediately called Anna. The girl asked the assistant to inform Zhu Long that she agreed to cooperate and transfer money to their account. She also asked her brother to invest the required amount of money as soon as possible. After a certain time, he received a long-awaited call, where he was informed that his sister had agreed to the conditions. Zhu Long naively believed that his plan with Chen would be successful and he would become the general director and his sister would get married. Van hurried to tell such good news to his partner and called the Dragon Lord. Yi was naturally pleased with this result and promised that Zhu Long would soon receive a new position, and the Wang family's fortune, estimated at hundreds of millions, will pass into his hands. At that moment the guard disturbed him again and began to threaten him again. The guy warned Cheng that if he came here again and behaved like this, he would regret it. The absolutely calm Dragon King hurried to leave this location. At this time, Ishue was informed that the general director of the Fars company had opened an account for 30 million, which the cunning girl was immensely happy about, since they fell into her trap. And once the money gets there, it will be extremely difficult, almost impossible, to get it back. Wang decided to write to Yu and offered to meet, but the guy refused. Then she sent a photo of him cleaning her room. The main character realized that he could not get away from meeting her, since Ishue could publish the photo online. Tan asked why she didn't delete all the pictures, because they agreed. The cunning girl asked him to give her the opportunity to atone for her guilt. The young man had no choice but to agree. Wang set the meeting place at the Shanghai restaurant. Entering the restaurant, he saw Van, who waved her hand and called him to a table. Yu sat down at the table and asked why she decided to talk here. The young lady replied that she liked the romantic setting, especially since it was a really nice place. Tan looked around and noticed that there were only loving couples around. The guy understood perfectly well that by entering here he was hooked, but did he deserve it all? Ishue decided to prove to him that he was very important to her, and deserved even more. The girl kindly asked him what exactly he wanted to eat. Yu said that it didn't matter to him and in general he was not eager to have dinner with her. Tan began to think that they were absolutely not suitable for each other with her. Wang urged him to relax and enjoy dinner. Suddenly the young lady began to flirt with him, touching him with her foot. The guy didn't like this behavior and he angrily asked why she was doing this. Ishue said that she was very tired from work and asked him to stretch her legs. The indignant protagonist tried in every possible way to resist this, moreover, in front of everyone. However, he still had to satisfy Wang and began to massage her leg, offering to invite a waiter for this. But the girl said that this was not necessary, because he himself was doing quite well. Yu decided to change tactics and take the initiative, because the more he resists, the more actively she presses. After some time, he asked if she liked this massage. Satisfied, Ishue quietly said so that he would not stop and continue massaging his leg. Tan saw her as a monster with a charming face, but would she be a worthy opponent in a real fight? After which he began to more actively massage her leg, which the young lady no longer really liked. This was evident from her expression, but the guy continued to knead. After a few minutes, Ishue still didn't say anything. The young man was confused. After all, she only had to pretend to be defenseless, and he immediately fell into her trap. After a moment, the main character leaned back in his chair and declared that he was tired. Smiling Wang was amused by the way Tang was acting. He seemed quite nice to her. At the same time, without ceasing to look at him, Yu asked why she was looking like that. Wang noticed that his face suddenly turned red and he was funny. The young man urged her to go straight to business, especially since they had already had a bite to eat. Ishue said that she was going to invest in a new project, but she lacked 30 billion, and asked him to help with finances. Tan said that this was a considerable amount and asked where exactly she wanted to invest. The girl replied that he himself spoke about a profitable new energy project. You agreed to give her money, but she would have to fulfill 2 conditions. Concerned, Wang asked what specific conditions he was talking about. The first was that she no longer pestered him, and the second was that he encouraged her to give him the phone to delete the photo. Ishue obediently handed him the phone and stated that he was obliged to fulfill his promise. Naturally, Tan agreed and began digging through her photographs. Suddenly he discovered a rather interesting photo of herself in a bunny costume and was surprised. You did not expect that he would have to face this, and she boldly gave the phone. Of course, the girl did this on purpose so that he could see what he was giving up. A couple of minutes later, Wang asked him if he had deleted the photos. Tan replied that he deleted everything and earnestly asked not to do this to him again. After which Ishue hurried to transfer the required amount of money, and after a while she would notify him about the status of the project. Thus, everything has changed, because it turns out that Yu is a scoundrel, and E is a good person. Meanwhile, Cheng received a message that the Fars company was accused of tax evasion and all shares fell by half. This news ruined his plan to fool Wang, and the Huajin company's investments are in the hands of France. The Dragon Lord believed that accounts needed to be checked constantly in order to avoid such situations. In addition, the Huajin company is one of the largest companies that is part of the Dragon Soul organization. At this moment, he was sent a message that someone had taken the opportunity to bankrupt them, and Yu and Wang were also investors. Yi could not understand how they managed to do this, because his plan was almost flawless. Rulong could not frame him. Ishue did not know about this, which means it was Tang who did it all. But how could he know about the pitfalls, and whether it was definitely Yu? Cheng probably didn't know. Then Yi asked if no one had revealed his identity. The guy replied that not a single living soul knows about this. The Dragon Lord believed that he would soon be able to return everything 100-fold when he destroyed the dominant families. And Ishue can be obtained in another way. The main thing is that no one knows about his true identity. But he wanted to kill Yuya so that he would no longer get in the way and harm his reputation. The next day, the main character woke up in the spacious house of the Tang family. And then he received a notification from the system, which awarded him the Manhwa Hotel for completing the arch. The guy could not understand what was going on, and when he managed to complete the task, the program reported that he had reached the 89th chapter, where Ishue fell into Ye's trap and 50 billion were frozen. Joyful Yu understood that he was immensely lucky with this, which means the game was worth the candle. But the hotel is quite ordinary, even though it was considered a 7-star hotel, and besides, the Tang family already has a lot of money. The young man called on the program to revise the reward system so that it starts giving truly useful things. Returning to the plot, it is worth noting that the Su family has undergone a severe decline in recent years. And if not for Muyue, then this clan would no longer be considered one of the Great Four. Su got out of her car on her way home, and was suddenly met by Yi. The girl was not happy to see him and asked why he came. Stupid Cheng continued to think that she was acting so cold on purpose to protect him. The Dragon Lord said that he missed her, but Muyue noticed that they did not know each other well and therefore there could be no reason for longing. Yi took her hand and said, he knows how worried she is about him, because he believes that the Tang family can harm him. But they will not be able to do anything to him, since he is much stronger than he might seem. As soon as Muyue tried to drive him away, at that moment her father noticed them. Chongshan ordered him not to pester his daughter, otherwise he would call the guards. Cheng stated that he is not afraid of the Tang family and will destroy them if the opportunity arises, adding that Su's birthday is in 3 days, and he wants to throw a party on the top floor of the Manhwa Hotel. Father Muyue said that he could not do this, since the top floor was quite expensive, and even the Su and Tang families are not able to implement this idea, but if he really succeeds, it will be a sensation. After all, the year before last you tried to buy the floor for 300 million, which is quite a large amount. However, the owner refused him, because he only agreed to buy out the entire building. The Dragon Lord assured Chongshan that he was quite capable of doing this, and they did not know about all his abilities. Then he suddenly called his bodyguard named Longya. A huge bearded man approached Yi and asked what the master wanted. He was the most loyal person from the Dragon Soul organization. Cheng always took him with him for safety reasons and to look handsome against the background of such an ugly brute. The self-confident Dragon Lord called on Luna to show them something interesting. I instantly started digging through my folder, and after a couple of seconds I pulled out a certain document. Yi took the piece of paper and said that it contained confidential information that would bring tens of billions to the Su family. Chongshan, in turn, thought to reconsider the decision to marry Yu and Muyue, because if the guy is really so rich, then this changes things. Su said that if he didn't succeed, then he would have to stop pursuing her. In fact, the girl would have refused him anyway, and just wanted to watch him screw up. Naturally, the smiling Dragon King agreed to this condition, after which he hurried to say goodbye to them and added that soon they themselves would understand that it was better for Muyue to marry him. Chongshan really wanted to reconsider the candidate for the role of his daughter's husband if he succeeded in his plans. Meanwhile, the main character decided to explore his new possessions and came to the Mingyue Hotel. Owner Wang in turn saw Mr. Tan and greeted him. Yu also greeted him and urged him not to be overly polite. The owner, breaking into a smile, invited him to go inside and look around. Naturally, the guy agreed with pleasure. Entering the room, the young man was impressed by the extremely elegant interior, after which I visited the rest of the luxurious places of the hotel, including the swimming pool with a veranda. Wang reported that Yi came to him and asked to book the top floor for a party. Tan was at a loss, since this is the plot of the 95th chapter, but for some reason it is happening now. Indeed, in this chapter, Cheng shows his true strength and organizes a grand party in honor of Su's birthday. The family then realizes how powerful he is, and Muyue finally falls in love with the Dragon Lord. After a short period of time, Yi overthrows the Su family and his power only gains momentum, after which he deals with the Tang clan. Yu assumed that the system had set him up, which is why he was so generous with gifts. From now on, Mingyue Hotel is like a gem that everyone is trying to get their hands on, and if he refuses to rent him, then Cheng can take action. The guy didn't know what to do. The main character suddenly looked at the former owner and thought that he could help him in this difficult matter. Van noticed the gentleman's strange look and asked what was the matter. Tan asked him to agree to rent the floor, but to ensure that the party ended in a disgusting manner. The man became wary and asked him again what he meant and what he was trying to achieve. After some time, Defa decided to initially meet the guest. Wang met Long and asked what business he came on, introducing himself as being in charge of the hotel. I stated that his boss wanted to organize a party for Su on the top floor and asked how much it would cost. Defa was extremely surprised, because Mrs. Muyue was Mr. Yu's lady. It suddenly dawned on him that Tang had deliberately sent him here, that his opponent had fallen flat on his face. The administrator said that this time he would make an exception and would not charge rent. Lung thanked him and stated that in this case they would do everything possible to ensure that their construction went well, after which he hurried to give him the plan for this very construction. Van kindly agreed. Having familiarized himself with this scheme, Defa noticed that this was a rather mediocre plan. The hotel manager knew his task perfectly well and began to spoil the party. Meanwhile, the main character suddenly received a message from the system, where he was given another reward for his shamelessness, named Gu Wu. Tan did not understand what they were talking about and asked the system what it was. This creature was the most powerful, which nothing could break. However, it could only be used once. You felt there was some catch. The guy again asked why this mythical character could only be called for help once, but the program never responded. In any case, the young man could no longer allow anyone to humiliate him. He became curious about what rewards awaited him after his birthday. Meanwhile, the news of renting a hotel spread throughout the city. Even the Tang family was unable to do so. In this connection, high society became interested in the identity of the owner of the Dragon Soul organization, after which Long asked Muyue to follow him to his destination. Su couldn't believe that Yi actually managed to rent the top floor of the hotel. She wanted to find out everything. The girl, in turn, agreed and already wanted to go with Yi to Mingyue. However, her father stopped her and asked if she would really go there, since she and Yu were engaged. Luan knew that the Dragon Lord was much stronger than the second-generation rich man and would easily destroy him. But Muyue assured Chongshan that even if she had problems, she was able to solve them herself. And she went after Cheng's big man, her father just looked after her, he had a bad feeling. At this time, Yi was enjoying the night view from the hotel window while drinking his glass of wine. He intended to prove to the Su family that he was actually not such a simpleton. A moment later, Muyue's thin voice called out to him, and the Dragon Lord turned around and saw her. Cheng greeted the girl and asked if she liked this place, hinting with all his appearance that he had succeeded. Su didn't know who he really was and decided to clarify one point. However, Yi interrupted her and stated that he had a special gift for her. At that moment, colorful fireworks shot into the sky in her honor, after which an inscription appeared in the night sky, "Happy birthday to Muyue." Su looked out the window at Ye's colorful gesture, but her expression showed that she was not impressed. People walking around the city, seeing the inscription, realized that today was the lady's birthday. This event lasted about 10 minutes and especially struck women's hearts. And while the self-confident Cheng stroked his ego and naively believed that the girl would now belong to him, Madame Muyue suddenly smiled and said that it was very nice of him. The dragon ruler himself could not believe what was happening and literally flew into a rage, since the following inscription suddenly lit up in the sky with fireworks: "Your beloved Yu." Embittered Yi did not understand why the name was mixed up and how this could happen. People in turn read the confession and thought that Tang really did it. Administrator Wang, who was looking out, believed that the gentleman would be pleased with this result. At this time, the guy ran to the Mingyue Hotel to see Defu with questions, because the person responsible for this event mixed up the names, and he wondered why he did it. But when he opened the door, he found a crowd of people who instantly recognized him. The main character did not understand why everyone was looking at him like that, and literally froze in place. Suyue also paid attention to him and smiled, because she did not expect such a desperate step from him. Shai Su thanked him for such a romantic and sweet gift and said that she was happy. The sad guy began to think about how Defa set him up. He desperately looked at this inscription and realized that Cheng would soon kill him, who just appeared at that moment and menacingly asked if he had organized this masquerade. Instead, Wang and the hotel guards answered that he presented this gift on behalf of Mr. Yu. Then he asked Tan if the gentleman was happy with today's holiday. The perplexed protagonist asked him a counter-question. Was this really his plan? Defa believed that in this way Yi would no longer dare to pester Yu's lady. But in fact, the young man did not ask him for this. He still could not believe that the administrator had thought of such a thing. Meanwhile, Cheng was losing patience and finally became enraged, subsequently attacking Tang with his fists. However, Muyue suddenly stopped him and asked if he was really only capable of threats. The Dragon Lord did not like the fact that his woman was protecting another. But then he realized that Su actually cares about him, because if he wanted, he would have already killed this rich man. Luan, in turn, asked his master to calm down so as not to do too much. Then he expressed dissatisfaction with Wang, saying that his master organized a party in honor of the young lady, and he set them up like that. Defa replied that it was Mr. Yu who organized a party for her on the occasion of Muyue's birthday. Moreover, he never received the money, so there can be no question of celebration on their part. I understood why the administrator did not take money from him, since initially he wanted to carry out his scam. Wang also noticed that Yi is an extremely arrogant person, because courting an engaged lady to Mr. Tang is disrespectful. Yu, in turn, began to mentally urge everyone to stop this circus. Defa deliberately stood up for his master, since Tan himself is a reserved person and only he could help him. Cheng, on the other hand, was not himself, but tried his best to control himself, thinking that soon he would fully demonstrate his power. Yi understood that it was not yet time to reveal his identity, and was looking forward to this moment. He naively believed that Muyue would soon realize his mistake and finally become his woman. After which Yi and Long hurried away from the birthday party of the charming Su. Wang himself was confident that Mr. Yu alone could cope with Chen and his bodyguard. The cheerful administrator then called on everyone to celebrate as the haters had finally abandoned them. Pleased with this result, Muyue stood in front of the huge cake with a candle and closed her eyes, as if making a wish. The sad protagonist watched what was happening, realizing that Yi would definitely not leave him alone now. Unexpectedly, Su approached him and thanked him for the holiday, which she would remember for the rest of her life, because it was the best birthday. Tan smiled faintly and replied, "The most important thing is that she is happy." The girl urged him to guess what wish she made, but Yu was not interested. But naturally he could not answer that way and asked what exactly she wished for. Satisfied, Manhwa asked him to come closer to speak into his ear. The young man slowly approached her. Suddenly Su kissed him. The guy backed away. He did not expect such a turn of events, while the people present were already happy for them. Just like the administrator, Defa was truly sincerely happy for the young people, which is what he shouted to them, declaring how immensely glad he was that everything ended so well. After which Wang approached the sad Tang and asked if he was happy. The guy replied that his happiness had no limits. Then he added that he needed to talk to him about an important matter. You notice that Def had too much talent for this job, and since his family is opening a new business in Siberia, Van's salary will triple. The administrator replied that he could not take this position because he was an ordinary manager. He himself understood that this work was really created for him and there might not be a better offer. But Tan said that he deserved it and could leave tomorrow, and they would soon prepare all the documents. After which he said goodbye and said that he had urgent business, so he needed to leave. Naturally, he just wanted to get rid of such a ridiculous assistant, so as not to get into a similar situation again. Wang immediately wrote to all employees to help Mr. Yu in everything. You especially need to protect his lady, and under no circumstances let Yi near her. Defa was sincerely glad that he was able to help Tang and reunited them with Manhwa. Meanwhile, people were still impressed by the fireworks, praising Yuya. Naturally, Cheng did not like this, who believed that this rich man had set him up again. Lung understood that this was the first time he had not completed the task of his patron. In this regard, he immediately asked for forgiveness from the Dragon Lord. He added that this would never happen again in his life and took an oath. He began to calm me down and said that it was not his fault. After all, they were brothers. Luan was surprised, since the owner did not even punish him and called him his brother. Cheng said that they will not easily abandon what happened today, and will definitely strike back. The Dragon King wanted this hotel to close and manager Wang to die. I asked what they should do with this second-generation rich man named Tang. Yi assured him that Lin Ji and Qi Yin would soon deal with him, and there was no reason to worry. Lung knew very well that they were true professionals in their field. Meanwhile, the tired protagonist finally returned home and collapsed on the bed. You realized that the difficulty of the passage would increase, since Cheng would clearly take action. At this moment, the system unexpectedly announced the completion of the chapter and rewarded the gentleman with a book about medicine. Tan was extremely surprised by such a gift. He did not expect such a generous reward. After all, the program finally deigned to present him with a truly useful thing. The guy believed that with her help he would soon become a real expert in this industry. Then I asked the system what exactly this book was about. The program replied that he should not doubt her presentation and urged him not to ask stupid questions. You then stated that because of her reward in the form of the Manhwa Hotel, he almost died today. The young man decided to abandon this treatise, which he informed the system about. At this time, his phone suddenly rang. Tang hurried to pick up the phone, where he was notified about the new secretary, whom he would meet tomorrow. The next day, a secretary named Qi Yin was formally introduced to him. The extremely smiling girl kindly greeted her boss. Yu also smiled at her and said that from now on she is part of their huge team. Tan assessed her appearance and came to the conclusion that she was from a poor family. Yin, in turn, heard an unintelligible voice and assumed that she was hallucinating. The young man urged her not to be shy and if she had questions, she could safely ask him. Suddenly, the assistant invited him to dinner in the evening, noting that she even had a bottle of wine for this occasion. However, the main character chose to politely refuse the offer, saying that he had a lot of work and they would have dinner next time. He himself perfectly understood the purpose of such gatherings, because nowadays a man needs to be on his guard. She was at a loss, as it dawned on her that she could hear the thoughts of her newly made boss. This made the Dragon Lord's task much easier. But suddenly the guy remembered this name, because in fact it was a setup. Because Yin is Ye's servant, you looked at her again and realized that this was indeed the case. Stunned Chi could not understand how he could find out about this. The Chen girl began to realize that at this rate the whole plan could go downhill. Suddenly the young man asked her to make tea, as if he was trying to send the young lady out. He himself began to remember that in the original story, it was Yin who destroyed Tan's company, because she is the best hacker in the world. Realizing that she was here for confidential information, you decided to slip her a fake. Hearing his thoughts, she assumed that he intended to forge documents about himself. Tang then asked her to send information to Mr. Zhou from the business department. The girl continued to play the role of a submissive secretary and kindly agreed to help him. Ian thought that he was on her hook, because you personally gave her access to information. He knew that this information would not bring her any benefit. Besides, his family treated her father well and helped him in taking revenge on Yi. She was perplexed and wondered if it could be that the Dragon Lord was her enemy and Tang was her savior. Being an orphan, she was always interested in the identity of her parents, because she was raised by Cheng's father. Naturally, Ian tried to find information about her parents at one time, but was never able to do so. But after so many years of searching for them, the girl gave up. But today Yu remembered her father. She wanted to know how much he knew about her family, and how she was related to the Tang clan. Ian intended to get to know his family better, especially since he mentioned her father. At that moment, the Dragon Lord called her and asked if she had completed her investigation. The girl replied that she had received only the first part and would send it to him in the evening. Cheng praised his servant and noted that if she did it before Ling Ji, she would become his woman faster. But in fact, Tan's thoughts had already radically changed Chi's worldview, and therefore she had a bad feeling. Ian then hurried to end the dialogue, stating that she needed to continue gathering information. Cheng, in turn, suspected something was wrong, since Chi never ended the conversation before him. After some time, the girl approached the boss and said that she had sent the necessary information. Yu noted that he wanted to expand his business into the gaming sector and would need her help. Ian immediately asked what exactly she needed to do and what the help was. Tan replied that there were only 35 best-selling games and she needed to sort each one out and then send him a detailed report. They also have a break room where she can have a free snack. The main character urged her to get to work and is not lazy, because there are video cameras in the office. He himself thought that she had come here in vain, since now she would have to play games all day long. Chi was depressed by this result, realizing that she should not be so gullible. After which Ian began to play games, which initially seemed exciting to her. But after just one day, the girl radically changed her mind. Another day later she was tired, but continued to work in a half-asleep state. Chi knew that she also needed to get back to gathering the necessary information for Yi. But she couldn't ignore the boss's order, so she played on. 6 days later, Ian dutifully carried out Mr. Tang's most important mission. The next day, the maid at the Manhwa hotel hurried the client to leave the room. However, no one answered her, so the girl used her card to get inside. But when she entered the room, she found no one, and the room was terribly cold. The maid decided to examine the entire room, and once in the bathroom she screamed loudly in horror. Because there was a dead girl lying in it, the bathroom was overflowing with blood. Soon news spread that someone had committed suicide at the hotel. And naturally, most of the clients, frightened, chose to leave Manhwa. The new hotel manager Zhongli was already waiting for the main character to rush in. The administrator immediately began to ask Mr. Yu for forgiveness. The guy said that it was not his fault, the police were already working at the scene and, according to preliminary data, it was a suicide. The young businessman couldn't understand why a rich man would suddenly commit suicide. Zhang also stated that the police were unable to find evidence. Tan asked about the video cameras. Li replied that no one entered her room. Yu suggested that Cheng's humble servant, Ye, might have been involved. Thus, they decided to take revenge on him for the incident at Muyue's birthday, but taking a person's life is too much. In connection with this, the guy decided to figure it out personally. Suddenly he saw a strange picture. 2 men with cigarettes in their teeth calmly went about their business, as if nothing had happened. One of them had a wound on his eye. Li assumed that the boss suspected these particular people and asked him. Tang replied that this was the work of others, and he would personally handle this investigation, while Zhang asked to reassure the victim's family. The next day the hotel was literally empty, and there was no one even in the bar. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Long appeared on the threshold of Manhwa, which you did not expect. The main character thanked him for giving him problems with the hotel. But I stated that the deceased was a member of their organization and therefore he wants to protect her rights. He added that he didn't like the gentleman's hotel and offered 2 development options, either close it or sell Luna. The right hand of the Dragon Lord wanted revenge for the humiliation of his master. In this connection, you offered to sell Manhwa for 5 billion, or he would go bankrupt. Zhang, in turn, urged him to immediately stop talking to Tang in such a tone. The guy also said that he would not get this hotel, even if it harmed his business. I suddenly snapped and overturned the table, showing my true appearance and hinting at a deplorable continuation of the dialogue. Manager Lee got scared and thought he was some kind of deranged monster. The main character knew his intimidation techniques and decided to play the game. You pretended to be a frightened boy and immediately began to call the guards. Long said threateningly that even if dozens of guards came running here, he was ready to kill them all for Mr. Yi. Continuing to play his role, Tang still agreed to sell Manhwa to him. I urged him to draw up an agreement and put his stamp, after which he would transfer the money. Yu instantly asked his new administrator to bring the seal. Feeling his power, Long ordered them to immediately get out of here, and in the future not to encroach on Mr. Cheng's dignity. The upset Zhang and the cheerful Tang hurried to leave the hotel. Li couldn't help but ask why he did this, because now everyone would think that his family could be bullied. But the guy, confident in himself and his actions, hastened to convince him otherwise, saying that the show would begin soon. Afterwards, he asked Zhang if Defa had arrived at his new workplace. The manager replied that the day before yesterday he arrived in Siberia and now Mr. Wang is already in Africa. You hoped that the Dragon Lord would not reach him and that Wang would be safe. Now Tan wanted to deal directly with Lung, and began typing something on his laptop. Meanwhile, I called Yi and told him that the guy sold him the hotel for only 5 billion. Cheng, in turn, was pleasantly surprised, because they managed to get Manhwa at an incredibly low price. The dragon ruler also asked if there was information about Def. Long stated that he had flown to Africa a few days ago. Yi urged him to send someone for Wang's head. Naive Cheng believed that now he could put on a real show, because Chi had also obtained useful information. At this time, at the police station, the investigator was sure that what happened at the hotel was not suicide. However, they have been unable to prove that anyone was involved at this time. An employee came into her office and decided to distract her a little from her constant work. But it was at that moment that they received a message in the mail, upon opening which the investigator fell into a stupor. Because this was the key to solving such a mysterious murder, the captain immediately ordered her subordinate Xiao Zhang to call Mr. Wang. The extremely surprised guy was literally taken aback and did not understand what had happened. Captain Wang came into her office, and the girl urged him to look at this message. Seeing truly irrefutable evidence, the captain was shocked, after which he ordered people to gather for a meeting and prepare a group. At the end of the meeting, the investigation team left the station to begin their investigation. Bai also wanted to take part in the operation, but the head ordered her to rest. Vanai decided to go get something to eat, where suddenly a male voice called out to her. The girl looked at the young man and suddenly recognized him as Cheng, and called him by name. He not long ago helped her detain a criminal who was robbing people on a bus. Then he ordered his subordinates to catch the intruder. Bai, in turn, was amazed at his abilities. The most memorable thing about him was his rather strange smile. The grinning dragon lord was surprised that she remembered his name. Seeing that he had an incomprehensible bag of empty bottles, Bai asked what kind of business he was developing. He said that he decided to help one grandmother carry the package and bought her some fruit. Vanai doubted his good intentions, because she knew that the more a person pretends to be good, the more demons he has inside. Cheng continued to pester her and offered to go get something to eat, but Bai chose to refuse, saying that she had a lot to do at the station. East liked to court ladies, especially unapproachable girls, naively believing that she believed the story with her grandmother and considered him a benefactor. The Dragon King wanted to win over Vanya, because when he conquered the city, she would be useful to him. Meanwhile, I hastened to change the name of the hotel to Longcheng, and began to fight against the negative consequences of the past. After which he hired himself a beautiful secretary and thought that things were starting to get better. However, at that moment the police unexpectedly burst into the hotel. The secretary, in turn, was terribly scared and did not know where to run away. Terrible Moon asked what they allowed themselves and what exactly was the matter. Vanai showed her ID and asked if he was the owner of the hotel. The big man answered positively and again asked the question of what was happening here. Without any explanation, Captain Bai ordered her subordinates to immediately detain him. The perplexed Luan stated that if they tried to approach him, he would be forced to resist. However, when I saw the police officers take out their weapons, I realized that in such a situation he could not avoid arrest. The right hand of the dragon ruler demanded a lawyer and make a call. Soon news of Lun's arrest spread throughout the city. He was accused of drug possession, and the hotel was sealed. Meanwhile, the main character was calmly lying on his bed at home and playing on the phone. Tan remembered from the original story that those twins he saw at the hotel were running a drug business, and since he found evidence of illegal drug trafficking, he hastened to sell the hotel. Yu was already accustomed to the anger of the Dragon King, because anyway he could not do anything about it. But he so wanted to live at least once in his life as a person, but problems tended to suddenly fall on his head. At that moment, the system tried to inform Tan about something, but the guy drove it away. A couple of minutes later, Vanai unexpectedly called him. The young man was surprised and could not understand what she needed. The main character assumed that Bai found the letter he sent to her. In fact, they already knew each other, since they belonged to quite eminent families, but the girl did not like the young businessman. After all, he was Chin's best friend, who was a famous playboy in the city. Meanwhile, Yu picked up the phone and asked why she was calling him in the middle of the night. Wani demanded that he come to the police station immediately, and if he doesn't show up on his own, she'll send the police after him. Tan thought that nothing bad should happen, because he was no longer responsible for the hotel. The father saw his son getting ready for the night and asked where he was going, suggesting that he was going to Min. But Yu assured him that he just needed to go away for a while, and he was not going to Chin. After some time, the guy arrived at the police station and tried to control himself. The perplexed Wani initially could not understand who was speaking, assuming that it was Tang's voice. Bai stated that he, as the former owner of the hotel, is also a suspect in this case. You began to think about everything that had recently happened and how I tried to set him up with a dead girl. Finally Vanai understood the whole situation and who was really involved in this story. The young businessman continued his thought process and suggested that the hair of the murdered girl could be in the Luna house. Suddenly the captain announced that the interrogation was over and thanked him for his cooperation. Tan accidentally mentioned having dinner with her as an apology. Bai replied that she had a lot to do right now, so dinner would have to be postponed until next time. The young man did not expect her to take this literally, because in fact he was not eager to go on a date with her. Hearing this thought from such a self-confident Yu, Vanai understood that he had too high an opinion of himself, after which the girl began to escort the honorable Mr. Tan to the exit. However, the main character suddenly saw Yi on the threshold of the police station. Cheng also paid attention to him and stared at the guy with a withering gaze. The Dragon Lord could not understand what his worst enemy was doing in the precinct. You thought the same thing, and hastened to assume that he was courting Vanai. Bai, in turn, inquired about the purpose of Ye's visit, thinking that he wanted to report a crime. Cheng said that he came to see his friend, whom they rushed to arrest. The girl understood perfectly well that if he was Luna's friend, then he himself was probably not as pure as he wanted to seem. Vanai said that the nature of the crime I was too serious and it was impossible to visit him. The Dragon Lord replied that he was his boss and therefore he was the first one Lung should talk to. Adding that the previous owner was you, and she must interrogate him. Bai said, I will be punished, because he is the owner of the hotel. Cheng was furious, since she was obliged to obey him, and not resist and be insolent. Meanwhile, Tang thought that Yi deliberately helped Wang Yi back then so that they could start a relationship. Hearing the guy's thoughts, the girl realized that this arrogant scoundrel had deliberately arranged their meeting. In this regard, she thanked Yuya for her cooperation and noted that she was owed dinner, after which she hurried to detain Cheng for questioning, since he is Ye's boss, and therefore has a direct connection to the case. The main character did not understand why she was so polite to him, and mentally asked her not to fall in love with him. At this moment, Muyue suddenly appeared. Tang did not understand what she was doing here. Yi, in turn, assumed that Su found out about his troubles and came to his aid. However, the girl walked past the dragon ruler as if she had not noticed him. Heading to her lover, she asked if everything was okay with you. The guy again began to mentally beg only Muyue not to approach him, thereby provoking Yi. The girl seemed to deliberately say that she was absolutely not interested in Cheng. Then she invited her future husband to walk home together and took him by the hand. The young man was literally taken aback. The Dragon King was also shocked by this behavior of his woman and could not allow her to pester his enemy. Tan, in turn, silently walked towards the exit, but at that time a female voice called out to him. Turning around, he saw Ishue, who said that she heard about the incident at the hotel and came straight away. But she never expected to see Muyue here, especially holding Yuya's hand. The girls instantly began to incinerate each other with hateful glances. Wang asked why Su suddenly became so active, because she had not previously been interested in men. Manhwa pressed herself even closer to Tang and menacingly declared that she was not obliged to report to her and that this was her business. The main character was irritated by what was happening and mentally called on them to stop this circus. Ishue also said sarcastically that she didn't dare to grab her boyfriend's hand. But Su said that she apparently has problems in her head, because Yu is her boyfriend. Wang again noted that they had not even gotten married, and besides, she knew nothing about him, neither what his favorite color was, nor his interests. Manhwa was silent for a moment, as if she didn't know what to answer, after which she finally spoke. The most important thing is that they like each other, and Tan recently threw a party for her birthday. This time, gritting her teeth, Ishue fell silent. Then one thought came to her, which she hurried to implement. Wang took out her mobile phone, intending to show a display of true love. Yu, in turn, understood what she was up to, and mentally began to beg her not to do this. At this time, Venai could not stand it and immediately drove everyone away, since she needed to work. The main character immediately took the distraught rivals by the hands and dragged them out. Cheng was generally shocked, because two girls he liked were fighting for his worst enemy. Passers-by could not understand who this guy was, that such famous girls went crazy for him. Yu himself was already on the verge of a breakdown, because he kept getting into similar situations and was pretty tired of it. A couple of seconds later, Ming arrived in a car and, smiling, asked if Tan had had a good time. The guy said that they decided to piss him off and asked his friend for help. Qin heard about the incident at the hotel but knew that Yu had nothing to do with it and offered him a little drink. The exhausted young man agreed with pleasure and hurried to get into his car. Thus, the two dissatisfied girls were left standing on the side of the road, seeing their beloved off with just a glance. Finally, Tan escaped from these crazy young ladies and breathed a sigh of relief. But Min changed his mind about drinking and suggested that he meet his friend next time, since he couldn't get enough sleep and wanted to rest. Naturally, Yu agreed with pleasure, because the main thing for him was to hide from Su and Wang. He suddenly looked at Qin and assumed that he was going to feel sick. It is worth noting that the guy really did not feel at ease, as evidenced by his exhausted face. Suddenly, Tan asked if he had been having nightmares lately. Qin replied that he really does have horror dreams and he doesn't understand why. The guy advised him to relax and get a good night's sleep, after which they said goodbye, and the main character got out of his car. Yu knew very well the reason for his friend's poor health from the original story, which is caused by the extremely negative atmosphere in his house, which Min did not even suspect. In fact, the root of the problem was the Jade Buddha, since it was Ye's handiwork. And when the Qin family found themselves in a difficult situation, Cheng came to their aid, and his family began to respect him, and his elder sister Kursun began to have warm feelings for him. The plot of this story was quite primitive, as always. At this moment, the system awarded the owner, Yin and Yang Wuji, which can only be used once. Indignant, Yu asked why it could only be used once. The program replied that according to the plot, he can improve his power with the help of this gift, adding, due to the fact that the master did not complete the chapter and angered the Dragon Lord, the reward was issued in one copy. The main character realized that he never managed to go through everything in an ideal way. Meanwhile, Wang Yi finally arrested Cheng, but she was only able to do so the next day. However, a mysterious stranger instantly rescued him by posting bail for him. Having been released, Yi understood that it was not easy for her to get him out. As it turned out, the girl turned out to be Huiyin, the first heiress of the He family. Their family was a branch of the Yanjing family, an elderly lady. He maintained contact with Cheng, who once helped her with treatment, and therefore they were indebted to him. The Dragon King mentioned his subordinate Luna and said that he was also arrested. But Huiyin said that in this case she was powerless, and she had to figure out how to get him out. Frustrated, Yi thanked her again for her help and promised to visit Mrs. He, after which the girl said goodbye to Cheng and stated that she needed to return to the meeting. The young lady knew from her grandmother's words that he would soon become the ruler of the world, but she herself doubted it. Yi thought that very soon the He family would fall at his feet, and the Yanjing clan should hurry up with action. Over the course of several days, Cheng's people made contacts to free Yi as soon as possible. Luan himself no longer expected to be free, especially since the police found the hair of the deceased girl in his house. The problems became more and more serious, and it seemed that he could no longer escape punishment. But a week later, he was unexpectedly visited by the Dragon Lord, I was truly happy to see the boss. Hopes for liberation arose again in Luna's head, because Yi always found a way to get out. The big man almost shed a man's tear when he saw his patron. Cheng said that there were two pieces of news, one good and the other not so good, and asked which one to start with. I asked him in a trembling voice to start with the good news, and was already in anticipation. He said that the lawyer nevertheless achieved a reduction in the sentence in his case. However, the bad news was that Long would not be released until 20 years later. The Qin family, in turn, acted very harmoniously, but his friend would have to endure for a long time. I was completely saddened, and its self-confident ruler hastened to leave. On one of the oldest streets in the city there was an antique store owned by the Tang family, where the person in charge of the shop was Zhao Gaoshen, who, in turn, had been serving their clan for a long time. You decided to visit him. Shen provided him with reports on the turnover of goods for the past month and stated that profits were growing. Tang thanked him for his good work and suddenly heard someone bragging to Miss Qin about his knowledge of feng shui. This male voice was painfully familiar to the main character. The guy literally shuddered. Looking out from behind the door, he saw something that he had never expected and did not want to see. The Dragon Lord entered the store in the company of the older sister of his best friend Ming. Curson asked if he was really special in this. The overly boastful Yi said that he was quite a capable person, and he had even worked as a security guard before. Tan did not like what he saw, and he intended to put the upstart in his place by reflecting on his actions towards the Ming family. Curson, in turn, began to look around to see who was speaking. This voice seemed very familiar to Qin. The girl was at a loss. From Yu's thoughts, the young lady realized that Yi was actually the source of their problems and the bad aura in her house. Curson began to realize that Cheng was only pretending to be a harmless and good person. And in fact, she was attracted only by his external data, and not by his personal qualities. Yi noticed that, according to his observations, there were obvious problems with the atmosphere in Qin's house. In this connection, in order to normalize the aura, he offered her an amulet, which took 3 months to make. You understood that most likely the thing was enchanted. He felt sorry for Curson. Hearing the familiar voice again, the girl again began to look around in search of its owner. After all, if this is all true, then she should start acting, but there is no need to rush, so as not to aggravate the situation. Qin decided to pretend and took Cheng's amulet, thanking him for his help. The cunning Dragon Lord said that they were friends and therefore helping was in the order of things. He naively believed that this time he would definitely be able to get Curson. After which they left, the main character also hurried to emerge from the shadows. The guy knew that Yi would soon come here again to buy jade jewelry, and it will help him hide evil energy, but it is better to do nothing with the accessory in order to avoid problems. Tang could not calmly watch as Cheng mocked people, but apparently this was his villainous fate. Suddenly the young man called out to Gaoshen and kindly asked him to come over. Surprised, Zhao instantly headed towards the gentleman, asking what was the matter. You urged him not to sell this jade talisman to anyone except Yi. Shen knew that this was the person who had recently entered the store. After Director Wang put pressure on him, the guy had an incentive to become successful. Gao wanted to help him. Tang also asked Zhao to increase the cost of this jewelry to 30 million. After all, he didn't want him to get this thing for a penny, considering it some kind of charity. Gaoshen said that he would do everything in the best possible way, because he understood the master perfectly. Yu smiled and said that he was counting on him very much, as this was important. The main character intended to find a way to show Cheng's true colors. After he spoke with the store manager, Tan left the store. Realizing that soon the Dragon King will come for the magical talisman of Yin and Yang, which was used to balance energy. And if you place it in a place with unstable energy, then after a while it will disappear. Half an hour later, as you said, Yi entered the store and went to Shen. Seeing the talisman's price tag of 30 million, Cheng asked why it cost so much, implying that they had made a mistake with the zeros. Zhao replied that this jewelry came straight from a tomb from the Song dynasty. The price and quality are justified. But the Dragon Lord stated that its maximum price should be no more than 500,000. Gao retorted again. Yesterday a specialist from Hong Kong said that this is a real treasure and the price matches. And if the gentleman doesn't like something, then he doesn't have to buy the talisman. However, Yi still agreed and rather rudely asked him to pack the jewelry. Cheng, in turn, was willing to spend hundreds of millions to destroy the Tang family. After which the smiling Shen kindly replied that now he would do everything in the best possible way. He himself understood that he could not compete with his master, and he would soon regret it. Since Xiaoya helped Wang, his condition has really improved. And after eating, the old man planned to practice calligraphy. Holding a brush in his hand, he tried to write a word, but suddenly he felt worse. His heart rate increased and he couldn't breathe, and his grandfather became nervous. Thus, Mr. Wang was once again confined to his bed. Yixue worriedly asked Jiang what happened to her grandfather. Xiaoya said sadly that his organs suddenly began to fail, but she did not know the reason. Everyone was shocked that even an excellent medic like you could not identify the problem. In fact, Zhulong had a hand in this, because in the event of the old man's death, power would pass to him, which was not difficult to guess, and after all, he had the conscience to do such a thing to a loved one, and all for the sake of money. Yixue literally begged Xiao to help her grandfather. She refused to believe that the situation was helpless. Jiang said that her grandfather could help him, but there was also another person who could save the old man. Depressed, Wang instantly wondered who the young lady was talking about. Unexpectedly for everyone present, Xiaoya announced that it was Mr. Tang. Yu, in turn, began to reassure them, assuring them that everything would be fine and he would definitely get better. Yixue immediately grabbed his hand and led him to the old man, asking him to immediately examine his grandfather. Everyone was quite skeptical about this, because the guy did not understand medicine at all. The main character believed that this was the work of the same Yi, who could not calm down. Tang suddenly discovered that the master's heart was wound with a golden thread. But there was a silkworm sitting on his heart, and if nothing was done, grandfather would die in a day. In this regard, there are several options to save Mr. Wang using the Book of Heaven, according to which it is possible to use about 10 types of medicinal herbs. At this moment, Yu and Yixue learned that they both heard Yu's reasoning, which they asked each other about. Van understood why she brought the young man in order to hear his thoughts with the help of her inner voice. Xiao suddenly said that she remembered one prescription, but for this she would need several drugs. Wang immediately called on everyone to leave the room so as not to disturb the doctor. The main character asked if he was needed at the moment, but Yixue pulled him along with her. Having stated that she wanted to tell him something very important, the guy became wary. You could not understand what exactly the conversation would be about and why such seriousness. The girl said that recently everything was fine with her grandfather, and therefore she believes that he was poisoned. Tan agreed with her and said that this option definitely cannot be ruled out. After which the young businessman thought that if it is not Cheng, then it is Zhulong, because the silkworm cannot be away from its owner. Yixue was horrified, but she actually suspected her cousin. Moreover, just recently he again contacted the Dragon King, and it is quite possible that they discussed this. Meanwhile, the girl quietly approached Yu and slowly laid her head on his shoulder, noting that if he behaves well, she will wear a bunny suit. The guy said that he didn't need it and asked her not to lean on him. She liked the young man more and more. Yixue was happy to be with him. Suddenly there was a loud scream in the house. No one understood what was happening. The girl turned around and saw one of the relatives and asked what happened. The guy happily told her that Dr. Jiang had cured Mr. Wang. Yixue, in turn, sighed with relief and even allowed herself to smile. The main character thought that this was very opportune, since he was also worried about the old man. At this time, grandfather gradually came to his senses and slowly opened his eyes. Concerned, Miss Wang asked him how he was feeling. At this moment, Tang suddenly received a call from Qin, and he hurried to pick up the phone. Ming asked him to help him in one matter related to feng shui, since he understood it. Yu asked him to wait for a while because he was currently visiting the Wang family. After the young businessman left their house, Yixue instantly called everyone to the main hall. And with an extremely dissatisfied face she said that she would like to discuss one important point. Rulong became nervous, because he did not expect that you would be able to heal the old man, but his sister should not know about his involvement. He naively believed that she had no evidence and therefore everything would be fine. Suddenly embittered, Yixue called her cousin over and grabbed his clothes. Then she threw him to the floor and ordered him to kneel, which Zhulong did. The relatives did not understand the girl's behavior and began to demand an explanation. The brother himself, also pretending, asked what happened and why she was behaving this way. Wang immediately accused him of encouraging her to invest in the unprofitable Far's company, and it was because of him that her grandfather felt bad. The guy replied that he really made a mistake with the company, but he did not harm the old man and could not do such a thing. Rulong's angry mother demanded that Ishue provide evidence of her accusation. The young lady said ominously that she actually had irrefutable evidence. At that moment, Li Deshen came out to them. He was the vice president of the company, who conspired with Zhulong. Miss Wang's cousin was shocked by what was happening and couldn't believe his eyes, while Deshen decided to confess to the conspiracy and all his machinations. Hearing this, Zhulong's father became furious and immediately began to punish his son. Subsequently, he began to literally beat him, because he hated those who harmed the family. But most importantly, his son dared to encroach on the old man's life, which was usually punishable by death. Those present only coldly watched what was happening, without saying a word. Suddenly Ishue said that he did not act on his own, and only succumbed to Ye's manipulation. The entire family desired revenge and intended to destroy the Dragon King. After some time, they began searching for him in order to strike back. Also, absolutely all companies started a war against the Dragon Soul organization. Meanwhile, the Qin family invited several feng shui experts to get rid of the negative aura in the house. Experts came from all over the country. The reward amounted to 10 billion. As soon as the main character arrived, he saw his worst enemy Cheng. Arrogant Yi asked Kursun if his talisman was effective. Fortunately, the girl finally figured out the situation with the help of Tan's voice. Suddenly, the young lady heard that voice again, wondering where Ming had gone. She began to look around to thank her benefactor. In addition, the unknown person said her brother's name, which means he knows him personally. The main character got out of the car and immediately walked towards them. Suddenly Yu saw Gaoshan and asked why he came here. Zhao, in turn, replied that he could not miss such an exciting show. Tang became somewhat wary and could not understand what exactly Shen was talking about. He himself said that he hoped for his luck and his uncle would be able to receive the reward. In fact, he was ready to try hard for the master and see who else could cope. At that moment, Ming appeared on the horizon and asked what had happened. The guy asked why he was so sad, because today his problem would be solved. Qin sadly said that he had no idea how to end all this and if someone helped him, he would be happy. However, the main character assured him that today they would be lucky and everything would work out. At this time, Yi walked inside and saw a huge number of people willing to help, because the Qin family was now at a disadvantage. One of them suddenly announced that Cheng did not belong here and he must leave immediately. The Dragon Lord said that he just wants to help and if it doesn't work out for him, he is ready to publicly apologize. The guy, in turn, decided to give him the opportunity to demonstrate his abilities. He instantly took out a certain magical talisman from his pocket. Everyone froze in anticipation. After which he sprinkled it with his blood, and the talisman began to work. Suddenly, he glowed with a bright light, illuminating the entire room. Those present were impressed by his skills. One of them even said that he had never seen anything like it. But suddenly Zhao shouted that they should get rid of this rogue, since only Mr. Yu could help them. Tan, in turn, did not understand what he was up to and what he was talking about. Deshen asked Gao why he got this idea, because the dark energy had disappeared. But Shen hastened to convince him otherwise and urged him to take a closer look. Black smoke was visible in the room, which was instantly absorbed by the jade amulet. Zhao smiled. Suddenly people felt something and wondered what had happened. And only Tan understood that everything had not gone as usual, and the plot again turned in the wrong direction. The same smiling administrator Gaoshan called the young man to action. Perplexed, Yu asked what exactly he needed to do. At that moment, his pocket shone with a bright light. The surprised guy reached out with his hand to find out what it was. Taking out a jade talisman from his jacket pocket, Tang could not understand who had given it to him. A moment later, a golden glow illuminated the room, ridding it of dirty energy. One of the guests happily noted that Mr. Yu really helped them. Thus, the young businessman was once again framed, and the script went downhill. The embittered Cheng could hardly restrain himself, because everyone should have thanked him. Instead, he made him a laughing stock, and the Dragon King began to seethe with anger. He wanted to kill everyone present. Their satisfied smiles irritated him greatly. He especially wanted to trample this Yuya, since he was setting him up for the third time. Kursun realized that in such a state, Yi could harm her family, which could not be allowed. Due to this, the girl suddenly grabbed the jade Buddha figurine, after which, looking menacingly at Cheng, she broke the figurine, throwing it on the floor, from which some magical energy immediately rushed towards Yi. One of the experts sent noticed that dark energy, after being released, always returns to its owner. Other experts supported their colleague, speaking out against the Dragon Lord. Cheng, in turn, began to boil with anger, but tried to control himself. The main character naturally saw and understood the state of the embittered Yi. At this moment, Qin intervened and stated that all the troubles of her family were because of him. Suddenly, Min ran into the room and called to grab this rogue. Tan tried his best to calm him down, but the guy continued to press on Cheng, who, in turn, could not stand it and grabbed him by the throat. Everyone was in shock. Kurson demanded that he release her brother immediately, but the Dragon King did not listen to her. Yi stated that such a small family could not do anything to him, and if not for you, they would already be dead. The young businessman did not understand why he constantly linked him to his own failures. After which Cheng gave him a choice, either Ming or Tang would die. Qin shouted again, urging him to leave immediately. The situation was extremely tense. The Dragon Lord tried his best to hurry Yu with his choice. Min did not want his best friend to suffer because of him, because he had already saved his life once. Yi began to exaggerate, saying that it was extremely cowardly of him to watch his friend die. A moment later, the main character nevertheless agreed to take the blow. Although he tried to behave more restrained, in this situation it was necessary to act differently. Kurson, like everyone present, appreciated Tang's action. The girl even shed tears. The young man ordered Cheng to immediately release his Ming, after which they would deal with each other. Naturally, he didn't want this, but there was no way to run away cowardly either. The dragon ruler loosened his grip and finally released Qin, agreeing to solve the problem with you. Going out into the street, Yi said that Tan had already disgraced him 3 times and he couldn't turn a blind eye to it. Realizing that he is weak in martial arts, unlike him, and even if he misses a blow, he will not receive much damage. However, the self-confident Yu urged him to go first, saying that if he attacked, Cheng would be in trouble. Everyone thought that Mr. Tan would deal with this upstart without any problems. The embittered Dragon King said that now he would say goodbye to life, after which he struck the main character with lightning speed, but something went wrong. The guy, in turn, stood absolutely unharmed and broke into a malicious smile. Then the discouraged Yi attacked the young businessman again, but nothing happened. You understood that one of the system's rewards was indeed useful, since even Cheng was not able to harm him. Tang decided to use the power of Yin and Yang to strike back, and just a couple of seconds later, the guy's crushing attack reached its target. As a result, the perplexed Dragon Lord flew to the side. Those present were shocked by the strength of the young man. Even Gao Shen did not know about his master's such abilities. Joyful Ming said that his friend was indeed very powerful. Everyone as one began to compliment him, because with just one blow he defeated Yi. Yu, in turn, understood that Cheng would now be furious, but he managed to teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, the wounded Dragon Lord was still able to get to his feet. He intended to heal himself with the help of the bottle, and then kill everyone, because a true hero cannot be defeated. Kurson immediately ordered his capture, declaring that she was even willing to pay money to anyone who crippled Yi. At this moment, Cheng shouted menacingly that no one should come near him. However, all the people ignored his demand and rushed to attack. The main character wondered how the plot would develop if they killed him now. After some time, the mutilated Dragon Lord lay on the ground. One of the guards suddenly saw the bottle and hurried to crush it. At this time, Cheng suddenly blew himself up and began to run away in an unknown direction. However, one of the guests was able to catch up with him and grabbed him by the pants, but this did not stop Yi. The dragon ruler tried to continue running away, dragging the guy who was clutching his trouser leg along the ground. At a certain moment, he nevertheless tore off his pants and Cheng, as if nothing had happened, rushed forward. The main character knew that according to the script, luck would always pursue Yi. After which people again began to thank Mr. Tan, because he was not only known in feng shui, but was also a martial arts master. One of them even allowed himself to call him the best fighter in the country, which, of course, was an exaggeration. However, the young businessman liked that he thus won them over. At the same time, Yu rather modestly noted that they did a better job than him, and called on everyone to rest. The people began to actively discuss among themselves the power of Mr. Tan. At this moment, Kurson suddenly called out to the guy, and the main character turned around. The concerned girl asked him how he was feeling, after which she once again thanked him for the help he provided. Yu was extremely surprised by her behavior, because she always hated him. Their relationship has not worked out for a long time, and this has continued to this day. More than 10 years ago, Chin slept peacefully in her room naked, so she could sleep better. And Tan couldn't find Min and decided to ask her where her brother was. Half asleep, Kursun stood up and saw the surprised protagonist. In connection with this, she literally flew into a rage and struck him with a lightning strike. The guy was shocked by what was happening, because he had done nothing wrong. And after this situation they never spoke to each other again. Modest Yu said that there was no need for gratitude, since he could not help but protect his friend. Tan himself was pleasantly surprised by the dialogue with her, something that had not happened between them for so long. However, it is worth noting that everything that happened precisely because of Ming. It turns out that he set everything up, taking into account his mental abilities, which is what my sister thought. At this time, Ishue suggested that Chin was deliberately helping Kursun recapture her young man. At a certain moment, the two girls met with hateful glances. Wang then turned to Yu and asked if he was okay. But, without allowing him to answer, Ishue instantly took him by the arm and, dragging him along, said that she needed to examine him for injuries. The perplexed Tan did not understand why she came up with some kind of examination, because it was already clear that everything was fine with him. Hearing his thoughts, the young lady replied that she was worried about his health. Yu suspected something was wrong and suggested that the doctor examine him, since he was more competent in this matter. At this point, Min stated that their family doctor quit a couple of days ago. Ishue, in turn, noted that he had nowhere to go and would have to examine him for injuries. Finally, the upset main character agreed, although he really didn't want to. Entering the room, Wang was followed by Kursun, and the girl asked why Chin had come, naively believing that her external data is in many ways inferior to her extraordinary beauty. The young lady said that this was her house, and she also wanted to examine the guy's wounds. In the end, the extremely dissatisfied Ishue reluctantly agreed to her terms, after which Wang urged Yu to undress so that she could examine his injuries. The main character again stated that everything was fine with him and he was not injured. The girl insisted that he at least unbutton his shirt, then, touching his chest, she asked if it hurt him. Tan awkwardly replied that nothing was bothering him and hurried to button up his shirt. Smiling, Ishue patted him on the back and urged him not to be shy, saying that she wanted the best. Yu looked at her and realized how lucky he was that Kursun was here. Her satisfied expression and sparkling eyes indicated that she was in love. Thus, this extremely eventful day came to an end, and everyone went home. Regarding Yi, the guy understood that at the moment he could not strike, since the Tang and Chin families had united. Soon, Mr. Yu also sent Def to Antarctica, where he explored the local nature. The main character himself received Fudo's book from the program and believed that with it he had nothing to fear. However, he decided to check, because the system had failed him more than once. He remembered that there was only one person in this house who was cruel to him. Approaching his father, he immediately began talking about how he could use some work. Tan, in turn, began to provoke him in every possible way in order to piss him off and asked about things at work. Naturally, the father reacted violently and once again took off his belt, after which he began to hit him on the back with a belt, but at the same time the young man smiled. At a certain moment he was tired. The gloating son ironically noted that apparently dad hadn't eaten enough porridge today. Tang Sr. was perplexed, sadly suggesting that he was no longer that age, and the bastard had grown up. Satisfied, Yu instantly ran to his room, realizing that the technique really worked, which naturally couldn't help but please him, when suddenly his fun was interrupted by a thin female voice, who affectionately called out to him. The guy turned and saw a young stranger. The smiling girl introduced herself as the new maid in his house named Ling Han. The main character also smiled at her and greeted the pretty maid. The young lady, in turn, asked in surprise whether the gentleman really didn't remember her. It suddenly dawned on him that this was the girl Ming had introduced him to at the club, and according to the plot, it was Chin who was supposed to be with her. But after Tan called his friend to interrupt their communication with her, and they never saw each other again, he tried to understand why she came to his house. Yu assumed that Cheng had already begun to act, and decided to take revenge on him. The guy asked if she had already worked as a maid. Lin stated that she knew how to wash, cook and clean. The young businessman noticed that it is not easy to work in their house, because his family is the dominant one in the city. But the confident young lady replied that she would succeed and there was no reason to worry. Suddenly, he demanded that Han sit down on the bed, and he would lie on her legs for a while. Thus, Tang intended to piss her off, so that the end result was that the girl would quit herself. However, a moment later, Lin obediently sat down on the bed, and Yu lay down on her legs. After which I very politely asked the gentleman if he was comfortable. The main character answered positively and continued asking her provocative questions, assuming that soon she will not be able to stand it and will break down, and then dismissal is not far off. But it's worth giving credit to the very patient girl, because he didn't even show that he was nervous. Then Tan again turned his verbal flow against her and said various nonsense. However, Han constantly answered provoking questions politely. In fact, she wanted to kill him. The girl tried to control herself, as she needed to find out more information. Yu, in turn, began to think about how such a sweet girl became a killer. Lin was surprised, because if he knows that they are enemies, then why such mercy? Suddenly, the young lady asked him if he had any brothers or sisters. Tan replied that he was the only one in the family and had only cousins. When he thought about relatives, for some reason only one person came to mind, who was watched around the clock. Han realized that Yu was actually a very cunning person, because even Yi could not defeat him. After which the girl suddenly began massaging his temples and asked if he felt better. The pleased main character joyfully stated that she came up with this very opportunely. Lin decided to ask him if she could stay and work in his house. Tan assumed that she understood his intention to fire her, but he wanted to deal with that a little later. The guy put his hand on her leg and said that she could continue working, but if she changed her mind, the doors were always open. The young man literally enjoyed the role of the impudent man and did not think of stopping. Although he knew her difficult fate, where her parents were brutally killed, and Cheng took him under his wing, who taught her everything, but at the end of the scenario she will hate him, although she will not be able to completely break ties with him. Hearing Yu's thoughts, Han was shocked, because she only wanted to find out about her brother. But it turns out that the elder who told her about how he saved her turned out to be the killer of her parents. Seeing the frightened expression on the girl's face, the young man asked what happened. Lin began to say inaudibly that she urgently needed to go to the restroom. An absolutely calm and smiling Tan fell onto the sofa and said that she was free. Walking out the door, Han tried to hold on, because there was no way to lose composure. After thinking a little, the girl came to the conclusion that from now on she would have to be on the other side of the barricades in the Dragon Soul organization. At that moment, his brother unexpectedly came into his room and greeted him. The main character was extremely surprised and asked why he came here. The young man joyfully stated that he wanted to give them a gift for his wedding with Miss Muyue. After which he handed over the gift box. Tang sincerely thanked him. Then, sitting down on the sofa, Yu asked how his business was going in the company. The boy replied that there was still a lot he didn't understand, and he clearly lacked brotherly advice. However, Tan said that he had impressive skills, because otherwise he would not have passed the test with 250 points. Suddenly the young man made a surprised expression and wondered why he was talking about this. Then he asked Yuya to come to their company with an inspection, since it seemed to him that corruption was rampant there. Tan asked him if his brother really wanted him to go there right now. The guy asked to postpone his visit for a couple of days to collect the necessary evidence. As it turned out, it was actually Defa who advised him to kill his brother. After all, in this way all power will pass into his hands, and no one will be able to stop him anymore, which is what the young man intended to do. The main character, in turn, agreed to visit the company in a couple of days, knowing full well that very soon he will fall into his trap and everything will fall into place. After which the guy left and instantly called the Dragon Lord, saying that you agreed, naively believing that this time Tan would definitely lose and he would become the sole owner of the business. Over time, the young businessman realized that Yi had actually sent 4 people after his head. That's all because he personally couldn't handle you, but they didn't know what show they signed up for. Tan then went to a meeting of many corporations, where he would speak as a representative of his company. Min met him in a company of charming girls and greeted him. Qin immediately grabbed the guy and, dragging him along, said that he needed to talk to him. The main character asked who needed him so much now. Entering the room, he was greeted by a joyful person, who was holding paints in her hands and offered to drink tea. The young man showed a bottle of liquid and politely said that he had water. Yu himself could not understand why all the girls were paying so much attention to him. Chin asked him for forgiveness for the previous incident, because she did not know that her brother was to blame for everything. Tan kindly replied that everything was fine and he had already forgotten about what happened. Suddenly Kurson asked the young man if he wanted to draw. The main character said that he had not done this for a very long time and slowly approached her painting. The girl sadly said that the three of them used to often draw at their home. It is worth noting that Chin has been a sensitive girl since childhood, but she also showed composure, and she found true friendship with Yu and her brother. They loved to sit in nature and draw. The surging nostalgia was suddenly interrupted by Tan, who noticed that her drawing skills had improved significantly. Kurson thanked him for helping her learn to draw then. After all, when she was deeply depressed and painted only with black paints, Yu waited for the right moment and painted her picture with different colors. Since then, it has become much easier for her to get out of such situations. The guy noticed that he simply didn't like the black butterfly and therefore gave it a little life, after which he hurried to leave. Suddenly Kurson burst into tears, and rushed out of her seat to ask why he hated her so much. Tan urged her to calm down, otherwise everyone would think that he was mocking her. Chin handed him a brush and once again asked him to paint with it. At that moment she took a step towards him and suddenly stumbled. The main character instantly ran up to her and asked if she was okay. Kurson said sadly that she twisted her ankle and now it hurts. No less sadly, adding that it urgently needs to be examined. Tan, in turn, thought that all the girls decided to make fun of him. But there was nothing left to do but examine her leg, and Yu helped her get to the sofa. The girl seemed to deliberately make a sad face and said pitifully that her leg hurt. At this time, Ishue and Muyue and Xiaoye ran into the house. Naturally they were looking for their beloved. Min said that he had some urgent matters to attend to and would be back soon. The girls, in turn, understood that Chin was being playful and continued to look at him menacingly. Realizing that he would not be able to cover for his friend, the guy told them that Tan was talking to his sister. Su went to the door and began to listen to understand what they were talking about. Van was much simpler in this matter and simply offered to enter the room. A moment later, the girls showed up to them. You could not understand what they were doing here and why they had come at all. Ishue stated that Chin told them about his whereabouts and that is why they are here. Then she ironically asked Kurson if she had really hurt her leg. The girl sarcastically replied that she sprained her ankle, but the gentleman helped, and she felt much better. The main character confirmed her words and said that they shouldn't worry so much. Muyue, in turn, understood perfectly well that Chin was deliberately fooling everyone's heads. At this moment, Xiaoye asked her to show her leg since she is an expert. Ishue also understood that Kurson was just playing for the audience and wanted to get closer to the guy. Suddenly Tan announced that he had a meeting about to start and had to leave. Wang immediately took his arm and hurried him towards the exit, saying that her uncle wanted to talk to him, which naturally didn't please Muyue, who instantly expressed her dissatisfaction and asked why she was grabbing his hand. In connection with this, she grabbed his hand and said that Ishue should not pester other people's suitors. But the girl replied that she knew about their arranged marriage and asked Jiang about it. Xiao said that these days times are completely different and everything has changed. In fact, Kurson really began to have some warm feelings for you, and she did not want to share him with anyone. And since they were unable to divide the main character, they all went out into the street together. People around were perplexed, saying that it was not normal for girls to run after a man. His father also saw them, who, like everyone else, could not understand why they pestered him. Unexpectedly, the guy noticed that his son had really good taste. As always, Gongcheng immediately grabbed his belt to teach him a lesson. Not understanding how many daughters-in-law Tang was going to bring into the house, noting his excessive swagger, even old man Wang was surprised, because his granddaughter despised men and maintained this position for many years. Therefore, I decided to ask her why she was behaving this way. Ishue said that he needn't worry and go to rest. Chongshan, in turn, asked his daughter to bring you to the house to have a little drink and talk. Muyue realized that everything was actually fine and her father's advice really suited her. At that moment, Min approached his sister and asked if she liked his friend. Kurson said that she was rather interested in him and nothing more. Joyful Chin suggested that very soon he would become his brother-in-law. Then he took the phone and said that this moment needed to be captured. Then he turned the phone on him and noticed that he was the most romantic person in the city. Meanwhile, the Dragon Lord's injuries in the hospital had time to heal. Having seen a picture on the internet of his worst enemy in the company of all his potential girlfriends, he literally went into a rage at such a vile act by the young businessman. Cheng thought that Team Grim Reaper would definitely be able to deal with this upstart. Finally, the main character returned home, where a submissive maid was already waiting for him and invited him to lie down. Satisfied, Tan happily lay down on her legs again. Lin herself didn't understand why she didn't resist him, but since she had nowhere to go, she continued to play the role of a servant. Yu, in turn, liked spending time at home, where it was extremely safe and no one was trying to kill him. Hearing his thoughts, the girl assumed that Yi was again trying to deal with the master. The guy was thinking about how he could go out now if everyone thought he was a gigolo. At this time, his phone rang. The young man hurried to answer his friend. Min stated that if he was free, he would like to discuss the topic of their previous conversation. Tan replied that he would soon arrive at the office, but he himself wondered if someone had started to act again. Suddenly it dawned on Lin that he might be attacked by 4 Grim Reapers, but she could not allow this to happen and began to think about a further plan of action. Meanwhile, Yu went to look for Ruoyu, but his combat power was not enough. In connection with this, he needed allies, because even cannon fodder was scarce. A moment later, he was greeted by the newly hired smiling actor of the Tang family. The main character realized that he was an extremely powerful person and that you rarely see such people in this day and age. You urged him to get in at the right time, since along the way he would meet someone who needed to be taught a lesson. The guy didn't fully understand what exactly he was talking about, because people with his status tend to talk nonsense. After which the extremely confident Tang hurried him to go to Ruoyu. At this time, the 4 Grim Reapers were already waiting for their target to arrive. Their leader said that 20 minutes should be enough to prepare. Then he asked the others if they knew about the current situation. All of them answered that they were well aware of this. The leader said that he had harmed their leader Yi, and therefore he should not be pitted, adding that about 100 billion had already been spent because of the Dragon Lord. But today's mission must be completed, even if not for Cheng's sake, but for Mr. Lu's. After all, if it weren't for his relationship with the former Dragon Lord, then Lu would definitely have become the new one. And after the task, command must be transferred to him, since he deserves it. At this time, Yu was racing in his car with his assistants to the mountain, where the killers were already waiting for him. The Grim Reapers, in turn, noticed their main target and began to act. One of them walked towards the young businessman's car and quietly threw a knife at him. The main character managed to pay attention to him and saw a dagger in front of him. At this point, the brother asked Tan to come out and discuss the situation with them. Yu, spreading into a malicious smile, said that he would just go to sort things out. After all, he knew perfectly well that he was in cahoots with them, so it was interesting to watch what was happening. The brother got out of the car and walked towards the killers to supposedly solve the problem. At a certain moment, one of the Grim Reapers hit him lightly on the head. As a result, the guy collapsed unconscious on the ground, which was an extremely implausible moment. After which you got out of the car and noticed that Ye's group of accomplices had arrived on time. The leader stated that those who know too much always die first. The main character knew that they were dangerous and, as a rule, one blow was enough for them to destroy the target. A couple of seconds later, he launched a lightning attack towards Tan, but the young man did not receive any damage. The Grim Reaper was in the deepest bewilderment, because as usual everything was exactly the opposite. Yu, in turn, began to mock him, saying that he had not eaten much porridge today. This infuriated the killer, and he hit him again, but there was no effect. It seemed that the masculine dignity of the hired killer was hurt to the maximum. After which the others came to his aid and also unsuccessfully tried to harm Tan. The Reapers couldn't figure out how he didn't take damage from the combined attack. The smiling guy didn't even move, and then completely beat up the ridiculous killers. Finally, the shocked mercenaries realized that they could not cope with him and they had never been humiliated like that. But at the same time, they tried their luck again, simultaneously attacking the impenetrable young man. The actor could not even think that the gentleman was talking about hired killers. Realizing that he clearly underestimated the gentleman and treated him badly in vain. What did the tired Reapers think about, because no one had put such pressure on them before? However, they still unsuccessfully rushed into an unequal duel with Tan. Yu, in turn, noticed that they were too weak and he had no desire to continue this circus. The main character understood perfectly well that he could inadvertently kill them if they continued to attack. One of the mercenaries asked the impenetrable guy what he wanted to say. Tan repeated once again for those who were especially dull, that they were all nothing against him. The mercenaries were already aware of his strength, comparable only to one person, Mr. Liu. At this moment, the joyful young man called out to his assistant Wan. The actor realized that you wanted him to take care of these ridiculous killers. And a moment later, all the Grim Reapers were tied up, and the satisfied Wan reported to his master about the work done. After which he asked what he should do next. Ten asked to take them to the police station. Lin, who hid behind a tree, watched everything that happened. She was shocked by the strength of the young businessman, realizing that in fact he could have easily killed her, but for some reason he didn't do it. Suddenly it dawned on the girl that the main character liked her and that's why he left her alive. Han understood that only with you could she feel safe. The guy hurried to take Joyu to the emergency room. After he left the hospital, he decided to call his uncle and tell him what happened. Then, a dissatisfied Tang asked the system why all the characters always appear ahead of time. The program, in turn, began to reassure the owner, saying that everything was as it should be. Then the young man decided to take back his well-deserved reward and asked the system for it, which suddenly informed him that his reward had already been sent. The perplexed Yu asked who and where exactly she sent his gift. In fact, the courier sent by Tang was already on the plane, heading to Africa. Meanwhile, Yi became nervous, because the Grim Reapers should have contacted him half a day ago. Cheng refused to believe that the young businessman could cope with the mercenaries. Unexpectedly, Huiyin came to him and asked why he called her. The Dragon Lord said that he could not contact his subordinates and needed her help. He replied that he should not look for them, since the Grim Reapers were in prison. Yi was taken aback. A couple of minutes later, his younger brother Lu Junzuo came into his room. Cheng asked him when he had time to return, because he had to be on a mission in France. Junzuo replied that he had heard about the fate of the Reapers and therefore decided to personally help his brother. But the Dragon King did not believe this, suggesting that he was sent here by the old man. Lu noticed that it was the old man and his mentor who asked him to quickly complete the task and fly to Suan. Yi noticed that his younger brother had changed somewhat and asked him if he had made a breakthrough. Junzuo understood that he had become stronger than his brother, who was still at the average level. Cheng also realized that Lu was aiming for his place, but if he made a breakthrough in the near future, then no one could compare with him. The young man decided to give the dragon ruler the opportunity to rest and heal his wounds. After which he went to the exit with Miss He, who suggested that the next leader of the city of Suan would be Lu. After all, if this is really true, then they have absolutely nothing to fear. The self-confident Junzuo believed that he would soon take the throne from his older brother. At this time, in the Tang Company office, the newly minted secretary continued to play video games. Seeing her, the main character was surprised that she was still busy with his ridiculous task. And she even got a taste for the gaming industry. Suddenly the girl noticed the boss. You asked the young lady if she knew what day it was. The girl answered in the negative. The extremely surprised guy said that today was her birthday, and she conveniently forgot about him. In fact, assassins don't celebrate their birthdays, but she was touched that her boss remembered this special day. Tan said that in general the company has a rule that everyone celebrates their name day, and suggested that she celebrate together. The assistant was shocked, because the gentleman himself volunteered to help her celebrate her birthday.